This song goes out to the people in the world. They need to hear this song right.
Welcome everybody. Hope your day is going well. If you can, please share the link. We can start momentarily. Appreciate it.
I'll hate to be them on Judgment Day. Look at all this evil crime. World is on a decline. The world is about to catch this heat. Cause destruction's about to repeat. Instead of living godly lives.
Once again, anybody just coming in, appreciate your patience. If you can, please share the link. We can start it momentarily. Thank you.
All they want to do is spread slander all day. So look around the world. Many dying every day. Yeah, they knew the way to live, but they didn't live that way.
No excuses.
And they died all in their sins without a sacrifice. So won't you send this warning now to the people still alive?
Won't you tell them?
Tell them whoa.
Won't you tell them?
Tell them whoa.
Won't you tell them?
Tell them whoa.
Once again, welcome everybody. Hope your day is going well. We get started about 35 seconds. If you can, please share the link. I truly appreciate it.
Tell them whoa to the souls
If they don't repent.
Everybody doing what they wanna do. They don't really care, they don't want the truth. They just wanna play religion like the fool. So they fight it, they can't tell you what they gonna do. Engineers, man, they don't endure the truth. Engineers, they don't got a clue. Paganism, man, it gotta go. Before the Christ comes and you hear these words, depart from me, I never knew you. You who break God's laws,
No excuses.
and you die all in your sins without a sacrifice. So won't you send this warning out to
Appreciate
the
you,
people
brothers, sisters,
still
patience.
alive? Tell them whoa.
Won't you tell them?
Tell them whoa.
Hope y'all day is going well.
Won't you tell them?
Tell them whoa to the souls.
If they don't repent. Won't you tell them?
Tell them whoa.
Won't you tell them?
Tell them whoa.
Won't you tell them?
Tell them whoa to the souls.
All right. Let's go ahead and kill the music here. Appreciate you, brothers and sisters' time and patience. Thank you for the prayer. I had planned on doing this class yesterday, man, but man, started feeling terrible. Getting better than yesterday. Still feel a little bit, but we're gonna get through this, Lord's will. Well, hopefully y'all day is going well so far. If it's your first time joining over here, Pastor Jay, and you guys can see by the title of the class what we're gonna be talking about. Man, I might not get through everything. I know how it goes, but there's a lot to talk about, man. Let me greet some of y'all right quick before we get started and allow some time for others to come in as well. Yo, bro, that's Deke right there, y'all. Man. Christian, man, I don't want to jack your last name up, bro, but I want to try to do it. Gambote, is that how you say it? I doubt that's how you say it, but yeah, man. You're welcome. I understand the Christian part. All right. Brother Jay, what's going on, man? Yo, my brother Romans 1:16 is my brother. Hold on. It's my brother Bryant. Brother Aaron, what's going on? Yeah, man. Yeah, that definitely was not how you say your last name. I'm 100% sure of that. But hopefully everybody's doing good. And No problem, bro. Like I was saying, I had wanted to do this yesterday, but started feeling under the weather, and so I had to push it off. But Lord's will, we'll be able to get through it today. And as you guys can see by the title, this is crazy and sad. We'll talk about a couple of things. So I'm gonna start with the outside the body part / people who say they're part of or is the body. We're gonna start with the Hebrew Israelite side first, and then I want to spend a great amount of the time on the other end regarding the Christian side. Let me pull this up here. It's some very important stuff that we need to go over. Let me give a quick little backstory. Obviously, we did a class, I think 2 weeks ago. And if my screen is acting funny or jumping around, the Lord is near where I am. He's brought a storm where I live, and the thunder is shaking the earth. And I haven't heard any lightning flash strikes yet, but yeah, so all that's going on. So we'll see. But where was I at, guys? We did a class a couple of weeks ago, and kind of when this whole Kanye West, Blacks and Jews, Kyrie Irving thing kind of really got to its peak. Because it was like as soon as Kanye West kind of hit the peak, and then you had the rapper Takeoff die, and that kind of like took, as far as in the media, that kind of took over with that. Nobody was really talking about Kanye West like that no more. And then Kyrie had that interview after the basketball game that everybody was sharing online. And he said what he said about that film, Hebrews the Negroes, that was on Amazon. And then, I'm on Facebook. I'm friends with a lot of people that was in the movement that remember me in the movement and things like that. And so I started seeing the posts and things like that. People was taking what he said, and adding that to the list of proofs. And so I did a class, and I was telling you guys, like, don't get caught up in that whirlwind of distraction. And in that class, I went into why it's a distraction. But obviously, anytime the Lord gives a warning, right, it's because men are subjectable to. Let me explain this way. Anytime the Lord gives a warning in the scriptures or in general, if he sends a prophet and the prophet gives a warning, you can best believe there's going to be the people that do what he say don't do. Like when the Lord gives a warning, he don't just give it and then nobody's going to do what he said don't do. Because anytime the Lord gives a command, good and or evil is going to take place. No ifs, ands, or buts. No ifs, ands, or buts. The warning that was given in Revelation when it said, hey, don't add to or take away from the book of prophecy. If you do so, I'll take your name from the book of life. You best believe. This is why people run around talking about this, like missing stuff and all this other stuff. You best believe somebody want to revise how the end gonna be at some point. Like that's the reason why the warning is there. And anytime the Lord gives a command, when the Lord says, don't steal, who has actually obeyed that, right? Who never stole outside of Jesus Christ. Don't lie, right? Don't commit adultery. Don't be idolaters. All the things God said don't do, man has done all of it. So if the Lord gives a warning about anything, you best believe there's going to be those that do it, right? Or try to at least. And so when a warning comes to not get sifted up into the whirlwind of distraction, you best believe people going to get sifted up in the whirlwind of distraction. And when they do it, then we got to come back and talk about the whirlwind they got caught up in to hopefully regain them back, right? And so you best believe if the Lord says, don't be high-minded or don't let your knowledge puff you up, you best believe there are going to be the many Christians that do the very thing that he said don't do. We're going to talk about that too. Many of you know that I used to be in the Black Hebrew Israelite movement. I used to walk around telling I'm from Judah, and I got the best hair in the world, being woolly, and Christ got woolly hair, and God got woolly hair. Like I walked around, did the same thing. If you was my cousin, you was married to a white person, I try to ruin your marriage, try to tell you can't marry them because they're the other nations, and you got to leave them alone or you're going to die. Walking charcoal is what we used to say in IUIC. We got that from that former Captain Hezekiah who was around when I first got in there. What you guys see on YouTube or when y'all look at IUIC, obviously that's the camp I was in. So whatever y'all see them doing, I did that. The way y'all see them talk, I talked. The way you see they act towards other people from outside their nation race, that's the exact same way that I was, right? So now you could kind of, if you look at them now, and then you look at me now, you'd be like, there's no way he was part of that. That's because I actually came to know Christ. But the point is that I was like that. I was exactly like that. Matter of fact, I was a lot more boastful in it than a lot of them because I would write the music and make the songs about it. And I would work with other people. Talking about UFOs and everything. So I believed all of that. And so I want to start off by saying something because this is going to actually be a segue into the whole Christian matter that we're going to deal with. And I got many clips I want to show you guys. Regarding what people call the awakening. All right. I want to explain this to Christian apologists, Christian pastors, whoever. I want to explain this to you guys as a former member in probably one of the most well-known schools in the movement itself. All right. And I was around many of the leaders, though I was not a leader myself because of the things that I did while in there and the stuff that I worked, who I worked with and all the other stuff. So I would overhear some things that other brothers wouldn't hear. And I got, so I was in that kind of environment. All right. I want to explain to y'all when y'all see them using historical references. All right. So when y'all see them with the posters, right, with the chains on the neck, and they're talking about the transatlantic slave trade. Let me turn my light up. That's probably why it's having a hard time catching focus. And you see them talking about slave trains and the ships and all this other stuff. I want you to understand the foundation of their belief is not in the history itself. This is why those of you that are trying to combat them with the sources, get nowhere with them. All right? Get nowhere. Because everything starts with them. This is why you hear a lot of them, and one of the things we're going to get into, you see a lot of rejection of historical references and sources and books and things like that. And they're hindered some certain books, but they're only using the things that support their idea of what they believe scripturally speaking, which doesn't require them to believe based on historical evidence. I hope that's the way that, hopefully you can understand it that way. Meaning this, if they open up Deuteronomy, and I know everybody don't believe there is like based off Deuteronomy, someone go the DNA route, but majority of them is because of curses and things like that, all right? DNA stuff is like some extra step that a lot of them take to just kind of solidify things. Some of them scared to do the DNA. Some of them believe they don't have to do the DNA because believing it is enough, all right? So, because of the curses. So, meaning this, if I open up the Bible and I see Deuteronomy 28 and I see Moses talks to some Israelites, he tells them these certain things is going to happen to them, and somebody convinces me that I'm that person because those things happen to us. My belief, all right, it doesn't have to happen to anybody else, but it happened to me. And if they use my ignorance to make me think we're the only ones that went through these certain calamities, then my belief that I'm this people stems from the Bible, not history. I didn't learn this in school. I didn't learn this anything anywhere else. I first came into this knowledge by some guys standing on the side of the street saying they're prophets. Prophets are supposed to be people who receive information from God in the heaven. And things that God in the heaven has told people to do, and the God that's in heaven that has done things in the earth, doesn't rely upon historical anything. All right? History is an account of things that's happened after the fact. After it was over with, it was jotted down what took place. So before it was jotted down and we call it history, the event that is being described through the book took place when there was no writing for it. That's the point I'm trying to say. There was no writing. There was no page they could reference. When Moses came off the mountain, there was no, is this biblical what Moses is saying? Is this proper exegesis? There was none of that. They had to either believe what Moses said when he came off that mountain, they had to believe what they saw with their eyes and heard with their ears, or they didn't believe at all. There was no history. Now they could go, well, he appeared to our fathers. They weren't there when God appeared to Abraham. So their believing this was by faith. They don't need to be there for it to be true to them. All right? They didn't need to be there. Even though they believe it's an accurate account, they don't physically have to be there and physically see proof of God talking to Abraham before they can believe it. The same thing like in the beginning. As the apostle said, he said, by faith we understand that the world was and everything made by that which we can't see. So by faith we understand that. We don't have to be there to see it. We don't need to see literal fingerprints or a hand come out the sky for us to go, well, you know what? Maybe somebody did create everything because we saw a hand come out the sky. Like, we don't need that. So for people in the movement, especially when you're dealing with the camps, the belief that the Israelites doesn't stem off of history, accounts, or evidence or books. It stems off what they're reading in the Bible and what they think the Bible's saying to them. So they believe that. Then from there, any book that doesn't line up with what they believe the scripture's telling them, they reject it. And if there is some historical thing that agrees with what they're believing from the Bible, then they accept that. So if you come with a source, and I got this and I got that, see, blah, 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 it doesn't matter to them. Because if it don't agree with what they believe the Bible's telling them, your source is just your opinion, and they reject it. So I want you to understand, dealing with this matter through human intellect and knowledge, you may be able to persuade some people through the history thing, but for the ones that really believe this thing based upon what they believe the Bible's saying, prophetically speaking, your sources mean nothing. It means, and you ain't getting nowhere with them. Let me start there. This is very important, especially when we get to the Christian side today. So you understand what's happening on both ends is that you have many people deceived on one end. And remember, like I told you guys before, outside of this topic, inside this topic, it doesn't matter. Everything under the sun, no matter what it is, comes down to two things. Either you're going to obey God's commandments or not. The demonic powers and principalities, they don't care what nation you believe you came from. It doesn't matter to them. It really doesn't matter to the evil spirits. And in God's sight, it don't matter where you physically descend from. It literally don't matter. So to God and to spirit beings, your fleshly origin doesn't matter. It only matters to men who are fleshly. It doesn't matter to spiritual beings. That's why y'all can sit here and argue over flesh stuff and call each other names and be in strife and contention, and the demonic powers that's leading y'all up into the strife are sitting back laughing because all they care about is defying God. That's all they care about. Is y'all, because if y'all are striving, guess what is coming out of you? Hatred. You're not being careful how you speak to one another, how you handle one another, how you treat one another. They have you defying God while you down beneath them, arguing about your fleshly origins and thinking that, you're getting somewhere because you got a book or anything like that. They don't care about that, bro. They don't care. They don't care if the white people really eat them, if the black people are really Jews. They don't care. But if they can have you entertaining your fleshes and arguing and debating and being anti-Semitic, oh my gosh, if they can have you being like that, if they can have black people on earth thinking and walking around saying the stupid saying, which is so stupid and false, two sayings that I keep hearing black people say in the midst of all of this. They did it during the Black Lives Matter thing, and they're doing it during this anti-Semitic thing with this term being thrown up. When it came to racism, the black community kept going, black people can't be racist because we ain't got the power. Like you can't, like you got to have power to be racist. In their brains, if they don't got power to like throw you out of your house, they're ineligible of being racist. Even though they're a lot of some of the most racist on the earth. They think the least about white people. A lot of people, if you hear conversations that go on in black houses and the jokes and all that kind of stuff, racist, all right, racist. But they don't think they are because they're like, well, we on the bottom, we ain't got the power, and they got the power, so we can't be racist. Like, that's what they think. And when it comes to anti-Semitism, the black Israelites and other blacks who believe they're Jews and other people, they say, we can't be anti-Semitic because we are from Shem. Like, that's stupid. That is dumb. So we're going to look at the word anti-Semitism, which literally just means hostility towards Jews as a race, religion, or whatever. That's the clinical definition. But if you show hostility towards anything, you're anti that thing. So if you show hostility towards God, you're anti-God. If you show hostility against Christ, you're anti-Christ. That's why the anti-Christ is not so much a specific name of a person, all right? Though there is like this leading beast, all right? But to be anti-Christ is to be anti-righteousness, anti the gospel, anti-holy living, anti the message concerning Christ being the Messiah. That's what it means to be anti-Christ. All right? Just as Paul said, the spirit of the anti-Christ is already in the works. During his time, it was already in the works. So if you show hostility, if you are hostile towards your neighbor, you hate him. You're anti. Your enemy. You're not friends. You don't love him. You hate him. It don't matter if you're from Shem and if all black people are from Shem. If you hate black people, like black on black crime, you're anti whatever they are. All right? You're anti whatever. So, yes, you could be black and be racist without power. And yes, you could be from Shem or Semitic and still be anti-Semitic. Okay? So, that needs to get thrown out the window right quick. That's annoying to me. I don't know why people keep saying that. But anyway, understand that the spiritual beings in which all men are placed under by nature don't care if you black, don't care if you white, don't care if you Asian, don't care if you're from Shem, Ham, or Japheth. They don't care if you're from the moon. They don't care if you're from the dirt. They don't care where you're from, bro. All they care about is defying the one above them, which is God. So they do evil, and then they influence men to do evil. That's all this comes down to. And God is going to judge everyone according to their works, not according to their race, not according to their origins, not according to their historical accounts, according to their deeds. That's it. So everything, your job, eating, clothes you're wearing, how you talk to people, all these things, those actions and deeds are taken into account. Yes, lying is one of them. But if in your quest to tell the truth, you're arrogant and boastful, you'll be judged for that too. So everyone must fear God, which is the whole point of the scriptures. And men didn't fear God. So the other part of the scriptures was what happened to men who didn't fear God. And then it talks about God's mercy upon all. So So know that for most of the people, let me turn my fan on, guys. Hold on. This cord should be long enough. Hold on. For most people that go into that movement, the belief stems from what they believe the Bible's saying, not what historical people have said. All right. And unless a historical person or book or whatever agrees with what they believe the Bible's telling them, then it doesn't matter what any theologian or whoever's saying. It doesn't matter. Okay. So now, since that's open up with that, let's start with that. There's a video that I saw somebody post on Facebook, and I'm not going to play the whole thing. I'm going to play the first 3 minutes. I'm going to show you an example of what I'm saying, and then we move on from there. Let me put it on the screen here. Fair use. So when everything happened with Kyrie, obviously it being the Brooklyn Nets, and that's in New York. IUIC New York decides to go there outside of the arena. The funny part, I didn't watch the whole video, so they could have said it. So I'm gonna just say this: there's a lot of them in there that are actually fans of this contention and strife that takes place inside the theaters. But they're using this whole little thing, about the whole blacks being Jews and that thing. They're using that as an opportunity to evangelize, right? They're using that as a platform. So they go outside the arena to show their support for Kyrie and what he said about trying to wake his people up or whatever the case is. All right. Let's listen to this right quick. We're going to listen to the first about 3 minutes.
It's called the slave trade.
Hey, brother,
So now you may say to yourself, well, Jewish people, they lost their children. But guess what? Jewish people got their children back. Right. Jewish people, look, listen closely to what the words say. I'm going to show you this is not talking about Caucasians. Read. Guys.
All right, so the first thing I want to say is is this. When a person's evangelism is heavily based, now they only pull in from historical things that agree with what they believe the Bible's saying, prophetically speaking. But when they go out in the streets, they're speaking a lot about history. And obviously it's the history that they feel agrees with what they're saying. So, and the people that they're speaking to, a lot of people are ignorant about history. And if they know any history, they only know really what took place here in America, namely the transatlantic slave trade. They don't really know about all the other slave trades. They don't know any other people who went into slavery, went slavery on ships, had yokes of iron around their necks. They don't know, don't care. They never was taught that in school. So all they really know is about all the slave movies that they continually saw in the theaters and growing up, which were black people in America. So when somebody stands out in front of you and they're using that information and are drawing parallels from the scriptures, and then using this to say, see, it's the truth. You don't have anything to combat what they're saying. So all you can do is listen, and this is the only thing they're presenting to you. And then they're reading scriptures that are simply agreeing with this. And so you're convinced, based on what they're saying, that the Bible's prophesying about, and here's the history to prove that part of what the scripture's saying. And so the people are convinced. Now, he made a statement in this. Now, in doing this, they also have to paint the picture that this only happened to blacks. So in the speech, I don't know if y'all can hear the Lord's thunder and voice going on right in the background, but we're going to keep doing his work while he does his work out there. But and so they use that information, the people are convinced. And so, but in order to do so, they have to discredit other people, because they got to paint the picture that this stuff has only happened to blacks in America. So one of the things that he points to, but the people he's talking to are ignorant about, man, most people don't even know about the Holocaust and what happened. So if you're coming and saying and using something they're well known about because all the movies, like the translated slave trade, and then you make a statement and say, well, the Bible said this was going to happen to the Israelites. He said, your children will be taken. And he said, the Jewish people, their children was taken, but they got their children back. So that they can say, we ain't got our kids back. Because the scripture's saying that there'll be no power in your hand to get your children back. See, we ain't got our children back. They got their children back. So therefore, the Bible ain't talking about them. It's talking about us. That's the picture that they're painting. Now, here's a couple things that must be understood by those who know a little bit more than the generic ignorance that is out there about the slave trade. Yes, black people's kids, just like any people who go into slavery, families are separated. Some families remain together. Some families are separated. In the history of Jews, as far as the Holocaust or whatever case is, those who didn't die, yeah, some of them were reunited, some of them weren't. In the transatlantic slave trade, some families after slavery were reunited. Matter of fact, some of the family members bought their family members' freedoms. So they did get their children back. Okay, literally. And some didn't. Because when they were sold, they got separated, the parents ended up dying. Or the child ended up dying. So they weren't rejoined physically. So that's in every case of any slavery. But they're going to point to the few Jews or the whatever the amount number-wise of Jews who did receive their children back. They're going to ignore the amount or even number of the blacks who got their children back. And they're going to point to the majority of people's ignorance of what they think it was, that how we just remain separate and none of us got our true parents back and all this other stuff. Okay? Now, here's the problem doing this. Well, one of the many problems. The people they're standing out talking to aren't in slavery. And many of them have their children with them right there. They're not separated. They have their children. Many of them still have their earthly mother and father still alive, and even grandparents. So they have not experienced being separated. They don't know what it feels like to not get your children back. They don't experience none of that because they got everything. They got all of that. So these guys have to pull from 100+ years earlier, before they were even born, to people who were separated in the first go around or whatever of the slave selling and buying. But after slavery was over and families continued to multiply, parents had the kids. Now, there's other reasons why blacks and families are split up now, but it ain't because of slavery. So the point is that they have to use that of a time before they were born and then reach back then to people they never met, to speak on something they have not experienced, to then convince people who are not going through it that they're going through it. Do you understand that? They're telling people who've never went through slavery about slavery and that they're still in it. And they're telling people who have never been separated from children, your children were taken away to happen to us and we ain't got them back. So to use the ignorance, the truth of the matter is some Jews got their kids back, some of them didn't. Some blacks got their kids back, some didn't. That's just the natural thing that happens. There is no black transatlantic slave trade history where all the black people got separated and none of us got our kids back. Like that, what they're trying to say. That's not what took place. All right? That's just historically inaccurate. All right? And even scripturally speaking, all right, even when the Lord said that the children be separated, there'd be no power in their hand, the Lord gave promise that he will regain them back. And you can read in the Bible where they came back and they had the kids. Like, stop it. All right. But anyway. So in order to establish themselves as the people, this is where the Jews and the other people are saying you're being anti-Semitic. Because in order for them to establish that they're Jews, they must discredit other Jews who they think is not Jews. Based on what they believe the Bible's saying, not based upon history. They will only pull from history if it agrees with what they believe the Bible is saying. Okay? So it doesn't matter what so arguing with them about sources won't get anywhere with them, because their belief is though corrupted, but their belief is firmly planted in what they believe the Bible itself is saying. That's why you say it's our book, it's our history book, because the Bible talks about some things history, prophetically, and righteously, morally speaking. So it talks on many things. So to them, the Bible is the history book. So if any external book don't agree with what the Bible is saying to them, it doesn't matter what your other books say. That's the point. All right? So you get that through your heads. It's important. Now you can find yourself in a big rabbit hole with these guys and just wasting all your lives. And the spirit beings that's above watching this stuff and influence all this nonsense are laughing at you all. All right? So how do you combat this? Is it to be combated? Here's the thing. Them standing outside a Barclay clinic, spewing this craziness, this ain't an alarm for the Christians to go outside and blitz them or go up there and argue with them. They're outside the church, outside the body, out in Caesar's land, spreading their nonsense. They're no different than the freaking Hinduism people in their temple serving their gods. Do you storm outside their temples and stand out there and blitz them? No, you ain't doing that. Unless they walk into the assemblies of God or in the city of God, it don't require us at all to go and deal with them. Let them do what they do. You won't be able to stop it anyway. You won't be able to stop them. Evil must happen in the world for the good to happen, for the good to come about that the scriptures talk about. Evil must go on. Must pick your battles. Our battle is clean up the church, not these guys. They're not in the church. All right? Our power to excommunicate and to shut up and to censor lies within the body, not outside the body. So you're wasting your time. It's one thing talking to people in the churches and warning them to not get caught up in this rabbit trail. It's another thing going to stand outside these guys' schools and blitz them or go to their corners with them and argue back and forth like vocab and them be doing and tagging on these folks. That's evil. You won't get nowhere. One day it might get you killed, and it won't be for righteous sake, because you're being foolish. But anyway, let's go on. There's a lot to talk about.
Sons and thy daughters, come on, shall be given unto another people. So you may say to yourself, that happened to Jewish people. They lost their children in the Holocaust. Listen, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long. Now listen good to the words of the Lord. Come
listen
on.
real carefully. Listen to this craftiness right here. Listen real close.
And there shall be no might. No what? No might. No what? No might. Might means power. Yeah. Jewish people are very powerful today. Why do you think Kyrie Irving?
Did y'all hear it? We only gonna watch the first 3 minutes. My soul can't take the rest. It's only the first 3 minutes. But did you hear what happened? I'm gonna go back again.
And there shall be no might. No what? No might. No what? And thy
Here we go. Listen real close.
daughters, come on, shall be given unto another people. So you may say to yourself, that happened to Jewish people. They lost their children in the Holocaust. Listen, and thine eyes shall look and fail with longing for them all the day long. Now listen good to the words of the Lord. Come on.
Now, before you read this last part, I'm bringing you up to speed so you don't miss it this time, because I'm not going to rewind it again. The curse that the Lord said to the children of Israel in Deuteronomy that they're reading, that their children should be taken into captives and sold to other people, basically, going to other nations. And he said, well, some of you might say, well, that happened to the Jews in the Holocaust, right? But then he said, but listen. And then it says, and your eyes shall fill with longing all the day long, and there will be no might in thine hand to get them back. But then listen to what he says, because he no longer focuses on Jews in the Holocaust and how they couldn't get their kids back when their kids was taken from them. All right. But listen to what he says.
And there shall be no might. No what? No.
And might meant military might. I mean, you couldn't revolt, start a war, get them back, you know, that. That's what I meant by no might.
Might. No what? No might. Might means power. Yeah. Jewish people are very powerful today.
So in order to convince the people that this is talking about blacks and not Jews, he references the Holocaust and says, well, you might say their kids was taken in the Holocaust, right? Everybody agree with that? Yeah. But then he continues to read it and say, and when it says, and there'll be no might in thine hand, meaning military power, not governmental power, but since the army is or military is a branch of the government, let's just go with that. I ain't going to nitpick that too much. There'll be no governmental military power in thine hand to get your kids back when they're taken. There's no war you're going to start up, nothing. You can be brought low, they're going to be taken. There's no power you got when this is happening to get them back. So he reads that and he says, Jewish people are very powerful today. Today got nothing to do with the Holocaust when the kids were being taken. Even if they had all the power in the world today, which they don't, but if they did have all the power and just ruled everything, all right, they didn't have all the power and ruled everything when their kids was taken in the Holocaust. So to reference the Holocaust, or when the kids were actually taken, and then read the rest of the curse that simply said, when this is occurring, when your kids are being taken, there'll be no power in your hand to get them back. They're snatching your kids away. You ain't got no power or strength to get your kids back. So in order to discredit the Jews from experiencing this, what the scripture was saying, they have to reference today and not the Holocaust anymore. If he had said their kids was taken during the Holocaust, and when their kids was being taken, they had no power to get them back. That fulfilled what this said. No, instead he says their kids were taken in the Holocaust, but it said you have no power to get them back. They're very powerful today. They got nothing to do with the Holocaust. That has literally nothing to do with the Holocaust of whatever power they got today. So this is the cunningness that these guys constantly practice. All right. And they use your ignorance and sleek speech to deceive you into this stuff. All right. They think it's truth. And Jan, he's one of the most prideful members up in there. He's always been like this. That's the guy that's teaching. All right. Unless he changed his name. But so this is what's happening. They use the ignorance of the people. The people they're talking to ain't experienced none of this stuff. Half of them even know what the Holocaust happened. All they know is gas chambers. Like I said, gas chambers. And Nazis. That's it. Adolf Hitler. That's all we kind of know. But all the other things around that, we don't know. When I was growing up, though I heard about Holocaust, I never heard about kids being taken away. I never heard about any of those extra stuff. Matter of fact, when I was in IOC, one of the things that they would say was to discredit what happened to Jews is they went into captivity and they'll talk about the Holocaust, but they'll say the scripture said you go in ships. They went on trains. That's what they talk about. They went on trains. And what's amazing is how I know the Holocaust happened. I guess in most people's minds, kind of like the big thing that took place. But it's far from the only thing that's taking place. But it seems to be the only thing that's referenced. So anytime somebody want to discredit Jews from going into slavery on ships or anything like that, you only reference the Holocaust because you got pictures and you got trains. But nobody talks about what happened in Poland. Nobody talks about all these other little places, all right, and how they got that. how they got to those different places. Nobody talks about those things. And so it's just, you have to discredit another people to make yourself be the fulfillment of things, when really you don't even need that. There's a way to tell black people, you went into slavery, your kids were taken, you were destroyed, you serve false gods, God is punishing you. There's a way to tell them that, which is actually true, without lying and deceiving them, and without discrediting somebody else, because you would have understood from the scriptures, everybody went through it. That's why you look at anybody's history, share a common history. Every nation shares the common history of sin against God, going into slavery, kids being taken at some point. Some nations utterly destroyed. You don't even hear about them no more. They don't even exist no more. Lands taken, people dispersed, scattered into other nations. Every nation shares that common history. Now, to what nation's hands the Lord used to do it may vary, but in terms of what took place, it's common. It's common. There ain't no special thing that's happened to black people that ain't happened to nobody else. No special thing that ain't happened to Jews that ain't happened to nobody else. All right? So, it's common. Blacks or West Africans or whatever ain't the only people going to slavery on slave ships. It's just what it is. You can argue they only had 5 ships. We had 80 ships. It doesn't matter how many ships it was. The point is, you ain't the only ones that experienced that. That's the point. It don't matter if they got 50% of their kids back after they were released and you only got 8% back. Y'all both experienced kids being taken, sold into captivity, and majority of your kids you didn't get back. On both ends, whether it was 20%, that's a minority compared to 80% that you didn't get back. And you 8% is a minority in comparison to the 92% you didn't get back. So they're using ignorance of history and all that stuff. And here's the thing about history, because we're going to get into it. I ain't going to jump ahead of myself. Let's finish this.
Why do you think Kyrie Irving is all over the news?
We don't know.
Because Jewish people have power. Who owns the diamond districts? Jewish people. Who financed the slave trade? Jewish people. This is historically accurate. That's not hate speech. That's called history.
All right. For example, were there some Jews that financed slave ships? Yes. Yes. Was there some Europeans? Yes. Were there some blacks? Yes. Were there some white slave traders and masters or whatever? Yes. Native American ones? Yeah. Black ones? Yeah. African ones? Yeah. What else you want? Were there white people that raped their slaves? Yes. Were there blacks that raped their slaves? You betcha. So, being able to find people from a certain racial group participating in something evil and then say, who's financed the slave ships? Jewish people. And you just leave it like that. That leads to the same kind of persecution that even some Christians, sadly, were doing towards Jewish people when they decided they want to persecute the Jews because of what they did to Jesus, even though the Bible said Jews and Gentiles conspired against them. Even though it was the Jewish elders and scribes that turned them over, but it was the Gentiles that literally put the nails in them. Who did worse? Did people just say, crucify him, and hand them over? Or the people actually driving the nails in them? Which one is worse? But when people go, you killed Jesus, it didn't leave it like that. Instead of saying there were evil men among you who delivered him up, instead of speaking like that, people go, Jewish people killed Christ. And then stream people's minds. They be like, oh, down with the Jews. And then they'll go and do something to Jews like has been historically done. Now, if we point to the few black slave masters and say, who else had a hand in slavery? Black people! And just be like that. And then somebody be like, yeah, black people. And then start looking at all black people like that. What do you think happened? This is the problem. Of course, there was some Jewish people that had a hand in slavery. Just like there was Africans and blacks and every other race. But when it comes to Jews, apparently, or ish, as they would say, there's no distinction of there were the wicked among them that did such thing, and then there were those who had nothing to do with it. It's Jewish people, and they leave it like that. It's like white people. To them, there's wicked white people in the world who do evil things that hate God, but there are some that love God. To them, all white people is the devil. This is why they're called anti-whatever. This is why they're called racist and all this stuff, because it is. That's a racist mindset. No one of any race could fear God and be righteous in their sight. All right? So, and I'm speaking specifically about IOC and other camps, and even people that's not outside, that's not in camps either. They carry that same stuff. But I know there's many of them that don't. So, you say there's the wicked among them that do. But
that's called facts.
That's right.
Remember what Christ said. Christ said that you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
So another thing that they do is they take the words of Christ and they mingle them up to make them mean something Christ never meant it to mean. When Christ spoke and said, you shall know the truth and the truth shall make you free, Christ was not speaking of flesh or carnal things. Neither was he talking about you realizing that you're the true Abraham's seed according to the flesh, and you should know that truth, and it shall make you free. Free from what? When he was talking to flesh and blood, Abraham's seed, when he made the statement. He wasn't talking to people who were lost and didn't know who they was. He was talking to people who knew who they was. And he told them, you should know the truth, and the truth should make you free. So why are they going around trying to convince people that Abraham's seed according to the flesh, and if they know that truth, it should make them free, when Christ, when he made the statement, was speaking to people who were Abraham's seed and knew it and just finished throwing it up in his face. And now he's telling them, you should know the truth, and the truth should make you free. So clearly it wasn't the knowledge of who he was. But these men distort Christ's words to mean something else. And they use people ignorance. These are the devil. They're the devil.
Give me verse 48. Put that sign down, get this sign up, officer. Get this sign up right here in a minute. Deuteronomy 28, verse 48. What are we proving? That black people are Shemitic. Deuteronomy 28, verse 48.
You got to do all of this to prove you're Shemitic? You don't.
Chapter 28, verse 48.
Bring it out.
Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies. Come on. Which the Lord shall sin against thee. So did we have to serve another race of people? Yes.
And did the Jewish people? Yes. And did the Asian people? Yes. And did the people that's now in Kyrgyzstan, that's in cotton fields today, did they? Yes. Did the East Africans? Yes. Did the Chinese at one point? Yes. Did the Europeans? Yes. When they were taken by ships in the Mediterranean Sea and sold into the Sahara slave trade? Yes. That's common national history that all nations share. So yes, black people, you have had to have serve as servants to people that are not your people. That don't make you an Israelite. That make you from the human race, because all the humans had to do that. Don't make you a Jew. But this is what they're trying to convince you. It doesn't matter at the end of the day whether you're a Jew or not, but this is not how you prove it. You can't use common history shared by all nations to prove you're from one particular nation. You can't do that.
Wait! Slavery. Are we still serving? Yes! Yes!
These are the freest slaves I've ever met. I've never known of anyone in slavery being able to conjure up 800, 1,000 men and walk through the place they're in slavery with. There's the Slavery Act. And form their own military and walk out and say, time for wartime and all these little chants and don't get killed. They don't even get beat. There's no master. There's no dogs. There's no plantation. There's no collars around their necks. None of these men never had collars around their necks. They're the freest, most liberal slaves I've ever met in my entire life. And they convinced many people like myself in the past that we were literally slaves right now, still in captivity, and still, we ain't got our kids back, and all this other crazy stuff. But we can, at a drop of a dime, put money together, get on a plane, leave our states, form a military in the middle of the streets, video camera ourselves, and walk through marching, chanting war chants. And the government don't even send helicopters after us. In actual slavery, like in the slave movies, when they like to portray all of this, when a slave was rebellious, starting up a revolt, and the masters heard about it, what happened to the slaves? If they ran away, what did that man do? He sent the dogs after them to get them back on the plantation. These guys know no literal dogs are coming. They know no military's literally coming. Then the military's scared of them. But they're convinced the people, they don't do that no more. But when they plaster Kyrie Irving over the TV screen, that's like them sending them dogs. Like, that's the way they talk. These are the freest, most liberal slaves ever in the history of human race.
You know what's the proof you're still a slave? You mind your tongue on your job when it comes about white people. Why? Because you don't want to be viewed as a racist.
So to prove that you're still in slavery, black people, according to these guys, according to Jan, who's teaching, the proof of that is that you got to bite your tongue when you go on your job, when it comes to white people. So if you was in a situation where you didn't have to bite your tongue, think about this. You're not forced to say anything. You're not forced to not say anything, because plenty of clips of black people not holding their tongues. And they don't get fired. Think about that. The white person gets called to Karen, and they lose their job. Not the black person who went off on them. So, but one of the proofs is you can't say what you want to say about white people at your job. That proof that you're still serving your enemies and you're in slavery. I thought that's whether your job, I just thought that's just an etiquette thing that you do when you go to work, whether your boss is white or black. Like, if your boss is black, do you feel the liberty to just not bite your tongue and just talk trash since they ain't white but black? I thought that when you go to work, you just go to work and you treat everybody with respect. And even if your boss is cruel to you, you fearing God will still obey them and respect them and everything like the apostles taught. I didn't know that biting your tongue and doing the right thing by not having outbursts of anger or to speak evil of a person is a sign you're in slavery. You're in slavery. That's what I'm telling y'all, man. These demonic powers that rule over mankind, bro, they don't care what nation you're from or nothing. They just want you to disobey God. Think about what this demon is saying through this man. The proof you're in slavery, black man, is that when you go to work, you got to bite your tongue when it comes to white people. You don't get to say what you want to say. So the black person goes, yeah, you're right. I ain't nobody's slave. I'm going to work today, and I'm going to tell them this is how I feel. Open up your mouth, lose your job. Being foolish. disobeying God, even if your master was cruel to you. The Lord said, you're to accept their authority and do what they say, whether it be kind or reasonable, whether it be cruel to you. Fearing God and knowing his will, there's a reward in suffering unjustly. But these men don't teach that. They don't teach there's a reward for suffering even unjustly. We're almost done with this. I mean, this class ain't all about them.
You don't want to be viewed as a racist. Read this. Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemy. Come on. Which the Lord shall send against thee. Now listen good to what the Bible says. In hunger, read. And in thirst, read. And in naked, read. And in want of all things. Come on. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck. Historically, tell me the time Jewish people had yokes of iron on their necks.
All right, I'm gonna stop there and just quickly reference this. All right, and then it's gonna be the end of that. I wanted to show you guys the example of why I say don't get caught up in this whirlwind of distraction. God has sent his message out concerning his son into all nations. The message is very clear, very direct, and those that disobey this commandment will die. These men come to distract you with all this so-called information, but it don't lead to righteousness. It leads to bondage and to sin. When you get a chance, because we're not reading this all right now, when you get a chance, read Jeremiah chapter 27, chapter 28, and then keep on reading the book of Jeremiah. All right. Now, reference the verse that they're reading right now, Deuteronomy 28, 48, and 49, about the serving the master in all things, and in hunger, thirst, and nakedness, and he should put a yoke of iron around your neck. And so they like to ask you, historically speaking, whenever did anybody else have yoke around their neck? And they ask that dumb question, okay? And they use your ignorance against you because you only know about the transatlantic slave trade. So you're sitting there, you're thinking like, I don't know of any other time. It's because this only happened to you. And they do that whole little thing. It ain't only just happened to you. But anyway, but the point is that when Moses said those words, all right, you actually in the Bible have this thing being fulfilled. And so, and not saying it only happens one time, but the point is that by it being fulfilled in the scriptures and the scriptures actually account it, you have insight into what Moses meant when he said it. All right? Meaning this. When Moses said he should put a yoke of iron around your neck till you be destroyed. And we have this coming about in the scriptures. And yet, when it is said to have been fulfilled, it did not involve literal iron yokes around your neck, but instead it symbolized something else. Then you have insight into what Moses meant, okay? So that if any man comes and try to persuade you that other people haven't gone through this because they haven't literally had yokes around their necks, literally, then you'll know they're trying to deceive you because you understand through insight of the scriptures that Moses didn't mean literal yokes when he said it, because we have it fulfilled and it didn't involve literal yokes, not even upon the Israelites. So that means your understanding of what the iron yokes meant is wrong. All right? So when you get a chance, read Deuteronomy 28, 48, 49, then read Jeremiah 27, the whole chapter, chapter 28, the whole chapter, and see this come about when it came upon the Israelites, but not just the Israelites only, but the Edomites, the Moabites, the Ammonites, the Kyrie, Zidon, and those ruling provinces. And the Lord said in Jeremiah 28, and verse 13 through 14, he said, go tell Hananiah, this is what the Lord says, you have broken the wooden yoke, but you have replaced it with a yoke of iron. The Lord of heaven armies, the God of Israel says, I have put a yoke of iron on the necks of all these nations, forcing them into slavery under King Nebuchadnezzar of Babylon. I have put everything, even the wild animals, under his control. This is why Moses said, you'll serve him in one of all things. All right, who else had to serve him on one of all things? Edom had to serve him in one of all things. Ammon, Moab, Tyre, Zidon, all the people that lived in those provinces, they all had iron yokes placed around their neck, which is meant forced slavery, and they had no power to revolt against Nebuchadnezzar. The iron yokes symbolize that human strength cannot break it. Human might, human power, human military cannot bring them out of the slavery. God has placed them in it. It's an iron yoke. Had it been a wooden yoke, just as Hananiah, the false prophet, rose up and broke it with his own bare hands, men could form armies and revolts and break the bondage of Nebuchadnezzar. But God said, you won't be able to do that. That's why he called it iron yokes. All right. And so the Lord put it upon the neck of all those nations. So now we have insight that when Moses said, he shall put a yoke of iron around your neck, he was not talking about literal iron yokes. So you're not to look for literal iron yokes when it comes to fulfillment of this scripture. Because we have insight that when Moses said it and it being fulfilled had nothing to do with literal iron yokes. It was symbolic of forced slavery that you could not revolt out of. Now, when you ask the question, who has went into slavery? Forced slavery. And unable to revolt themselves out of it. All nations experienced it. Edom experienced it. Edom experienced it so bad, they don't even exist no more. Moab exists, they don't exist no more. Because God said through Jeremiah later on, he was going to utterly destroy these people. They won't even exist no more as a nation. Their captivities would be so bad. Their places would be destroyed so bad. Ammon, Kyrie, Zidon, and all this. So, and remember, even during this time with Edom, Moab, there were other nations that they had overcame through their wars that lived among them. So when you have, let's say, for example, Edom overcame the Jebusite tribes and took some of the Jebusites among themselves. All right. And so now the Jebusites are like slaves of Edom. But Edom is pissing God off because they're idolaters. So then God says, I'm going to destroy Edom. I'm going to destroy their lands. Their house is going to be vacant and no one will live there no more. So God says, I'm going to send Ammon to do it. So when Ammon comes into Edom to raid them and siege them and to kill them and to send them into slavery, they're not only taking Edom, but they're taking everything Edom possesses, which also includes those Jebusites that were the slaves there. If they don't kill them with the sword, they're going to take Edom and those Jebusite remnants with them too. So you have to understand that through wars, it wasn't 100% of the native population there. These are people that had extended borders and they had other wars and they've taken other people as slaves and things like that. So when the Lord would come against Ammon or Moab, there was just more than just Edom or Moab there in those lands and provinces. So when the Lord said, you have iron yokes, it came by Edom and all that they possessed. Ammon and all they possessed. Moab and all they possessed. Israel and all they possessed, because Israel had slaves too from other nations. All of them went through it. When they were dispersed, it was more than just the Israelites that were dispersed. So the point is this. We have insight. So any man standing on the corner and trying to convince you, this is only talking about one people because they got pictures and you could literally see iron yokes. Just because you have pictures and other people may not have the pictures doesn't mean it didn't happen. All right. Somebody said, well, it ain't written down. Just because it wasn't written down doesn't mean it didn't happen. All right. Even your own Bible is an example. For it didn't jot down everything that took place. Matter of fact, when it comes to the works of Christ, the apostles told you straight up, they didn't even waste their time trying to write down all the things Christ did. So just because you have some of the things Christ did, enough for you to believe who he is, you don't need to know everything he did. But here's some examples of things he did do for your benefit. But everything he did, we didn't write it down. So just because they didn't write it down, that don't mean Christ only did what you're reading. Christ did much more stuff than what you read or can read. But it's lost to you because unless somebody orally kept the account, you don't know what Christ did at that certain time with the certain person and what the certain miracle was. But that doesn't mean that it wasn't done. So when it comes to books and history, there'll always be books. There'll always be discoveries. There'll always be so-called contradictions. There'll be always that. You should not place all your eggs in that basket and trust in men's researches. It can change. That's why there's revisions to books. That's why there's updates. The problem is the updates are like years apart. So the point is, just because other nations, let's say there was no, let's say the Jews were persecuted, they went into slavery on ships in freaking 1308, but there's no pictures. And the art they might have made is now destroyed because of persecution or whatever. Just because it's destroyed, it doesn't mean the event didn't occur. So now in modern time, when you have black Israelites on the side of the street, and since their slavery is one of the more recent things, and it's constantly talked about in America, and so they got pictures and movies and all this to reference, and so now they got it in the streets, and they're trying to tell you, this happened to you. Who else did it happen to? Give me the pictures. That doesn't mean what they're saying is true. It doesn't mean that. So, but men they only believe what they can see. That's why many don't believe in God. They don't believe what they can see, and this is why many people claim to follow God end up falling away, because they walk by sight and not by faith, which requires no physical sight. But men only can believe what's right in front of them. Their lust is based on what they can see, the things they can grab hold to, the pleasures they can physically enjoy. So God placed all the nations in iron yokes. So this is not a black person thing. This is not you a Jew because you had an iron yoke around your neck. No. But this is what they use, the ignorance of the people. But here's the problem. Because as much as these guys are deceivers, and they're just one of the deceivers, and I ain't going down the list of who all the deceivers is. At the end of the day, something was brought to my attention the other night, and I went and watched it. And it was terrible. When you guys hear me say the statement, all those books in the background, when y'all hear me say that statement, and some people laugh and they're like, oh, because it's a funny statement. All those books in the background. What am I saying when I say all those books in the background? All right. When I say all those books in the background, I'm talking about these pastors and these apologists and these ministers, these guys who every time they go teach, every time they go live, or they want to seemingly be important, they sit down in an office somewhere with a shelf full of books, or a wall full of degree plaques or whatever case, all the accolades. They're like that, and they use the big old words and all this stuff. And I ain't saying whether what they're saying is true or false. The point is that's the setting, that's the backdrop. That's their backdrop. But then when it comes to righteousness and how to live, these dudes are clueless. So I'm like, all them books in the background, none of them tell you to come out of them theaters and stadium games, stop freaking being Cowboy fans and talking trash to each other and degrading one another and joking around for fun as you degrade one another and cheering on men in strife and contention and rivalry. All them books in the background, pastors. But y'all lining up to go be Thor fans? Y'all Thor fans, y'all like Bastet, but y'all want to argue with Jabari and Egyptology folks, but y'all fans of their gods. You wear their shirts and pop the collars of them. But you got all them dang on books in the background. Now, there was something that was done by Damon Richardson the other night. It was disingenuous. He knows the truth when the question was asked to him by Alton. And he skipped on right around it. Well, we're going to deal with it. Because now I've had my run-ins with Damon Richardson in the past. Matter of fact, he said to me a couple years back, I'm a cancer to the body of Christ. Now, I still remember those words. Now, he was having a discussion because he did a video. Marina was analyzing it. And then Berean invited him on. And then I didn't even know any of this was going on. I was just chillaxing. And then another brother hit me up and told me, what was going on. So I went in and listened. And my mouth was dropping. From the disrespect to the boastfulness and arrogance, which is not new to me, and it shouldn't be new to anybody when you're dealing with him. But the boasting and arrogance, and then, among other things, which we're going to highlight in a second, but there was a question that was asked to him. He knows it because he's well studied. And he got many books. So when the question was asked, he know the answer. I know he know the answer. But in case y'all don't know the answer, I want to talk to y'all about something they kept talking about. And it's annoying to me to keep hearing it. All right? And this is why he ain't going to get nowhere with the Black Hebrew Israelites, no matter how smart he sound and all the books he got. Because that's why I start off by saying to you guys, these people's beliefs is ingrained in what they believe that the Bible is saying to them prophetically. It's not ingrained in historical accounts. If it don't agree with what they believe in the Bible is saying, it doesn't matter what you're saying. It doesn't matter what the book you got says. It doesn't matter what study you got from whatever year, from whatever university. None of it matters. Matter of fact, I'll give you an example among the Christian church of a so-called, I guess, peer-reviewed whatever study of something that you can find in universities or the high intellectual people that don't make sense, it don't exist, and it's anti-Christ. And that is that essentials, non-essential stuff. That ain't a doctrine from God. The apostles never handed it down. It don't exist. And it's all it does is cause division in the body of Christ. But some of these guys are live and die by it. And that's just one example. But you kept hearing them say things about peer review. So unless a Black Hebrew Israelite got up there and had some peer-reviewed study that would contradict what he had gotten from 2013, whatever that school was, don't say nothing to him. That's the attitude that he had. Now, him being so well-read, now there was a question that was asked to him. I'm going to start off with that question first. I'm going to let that be my foundation dealing with the Christian side. There was a question asked him by Alton. It was an awesome question. And I want y'all to hear the question. All right? So give me a quick second. I want y'all to hear this question. Because this is why I pulled out from dealing with a lot. That's why I stopped dealing with vocab and a lot of them guys. Because they don't agree among one another. Some of them think each other are heretics. But you would never know it because they won't do it all crazily openly. But these are discussions that they would have behind the scenes, but they were all tied up. They were all team up to come against the Black Hebrew Israelites. When I found out about that, because I didn't know that was going on at first. And when I got around them guys, I'm thinking, oh, hey, man, just a whole bunch of Christians. We all agree. We all in Christ and blah, 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 blah. And we just, and hey, I'm one of the few people that's among them that was actually in the movement. And so here I'm trying to get people out of the, the movement and stuff like that and talk about Christ. And here are my fellow laborers. That's what I thought it was like. Then I found out, man, this guy right here think this guy's a heretic because of this belief. Well, I believe the same thing too. So you think that I'm a heretic, but we teaming up because we dealing with the Black Hebrew Israelites. We're going to hold a panel. We're going to come together on Faithful God's channel. Man, I was like, bro, I ain't doing that. This ain't just jump on the Black Hebrew Israelites thing. And so I was in it. I shared the mindset. I understand why the people are doing what they're doing. This ain't just because I got 9,000 books and I'm so well read. I was in it. I lived it. I had the whole mindset. I had the same spirit as they had. And so now coming to the light of Christ, there's a level of compassion and understanding that I operate with these guys. Then a lot of these just well-read, studied, book-reading guys deal with them. And so it shows through their attitudes with them, how they talk with them. This was terrible. That took place last night. And all them elders that was in there, Elder Mike was in there. I saw the Keith Johnson brother was in there. There was a whole bunch of them in there. It was just rooting them on. None of them was saying, yo, this is evil. Stop dealing with them like that. Stop being arrogant and boastful. Nobody say that. Berean didn't mute his mic to get order or nothing. He let it go on. All this evil that took place behind the guise of knowledge. Tell them true knowledge or whatever cases. So there was a question that was asked. Let me get my timestamp. And so I want to go over this with y'all because he didn't do it that night. Here's the question. about this whole peer-reviewed study, and if it's not peer-reviewed, don't say nothing to me. All right, that little whole attitude. All right, let's find out about the peer-reviewed. All right, that's what I tell you guys. That's why I made that statement. All them books in the background. When I start first making that statement, brothers and sisters, I was talking about him. This is the originator of all them books in the background. When I said all them books, when I started saying all the books in the background, it was because of him and other people like him during that time. So here's the originator of why I say all them books in the background. All right. But listen to the question, because we're going to deal with this peer-reviewed crap. All right.
Oh, yeah, my bad. Yeah, Berean put me out by accident.
Very useful.
Could there be evidence, could there be later on evidence to basically contradict the studies that you've been bringing up tonight? Like the, what is it, the Wayne State?
Yeah.
Is it the Wayne State study? Yeah. Do you think that there could be evidence later that could contradict that?
Do I think that there could be evidence that could contradict that? That's a hypothetical. Right. So the reality is that for people who have spent greater than 90 years building on a fallacious claim, you would think by now that they would already have the evidence to support their claim. So the fact of the matter is that no evidence has been produced to the contrary to debunk what the Wayne State research proved. And secondly, no conclusive research has ever been done to support the positive claim, that they have made that West Africans are Israelites. So the fact of the matter is.
So I'm going to back it up one more time. So you can hear the question one more time. You guys heard his answer. I'm going to let it play one more time, and then we're going to deal with this.
Contradict the studies that you've been bringing up tonight, like the what is it, the Wayne State?
Yeah.
Is it the Wayne State study? Yeah. Do you think that there could be evidence later that could contradict that?
Do I think that there could be evidence that could contradict that? That's a hypothetical. Right. So the reality is that for people who have spent greater.
So his response to that question is, could there be later on evidence that comes up that would contradict what he's talking about during this whole thing with Berean? And so he says, is there anything that could contradict it or possibly come back and contradict it? That's a hypothetical, but the reality is, and so he deals with it right now. He doesn't actually answer Alton's question. All he says is that that's a hypothetical question as to whether or not there could be later on evidence that goes against something that he's saying right now. But the reality, meaning right now, what they're doing right now, is the fact that there is no evidence to substantiate what the Black Hebrew Israelites are saying or to disprove what the Wayne State University study says from 2013. So that's his point. Now, to deal with the question that was asked, though, because we know the reality is, okay, the people you talk to, none of them got no evidence, or every case is that, that is peer-reviewed. All right. They believe they got evidence, got many books, things they want to bring up, but they're not allowed to bring it up because he set the standard. It must be peer-reviewed. It must be peer-reviewed before he'll talk to them or listen to what they got to say. All right. Because it's not that during this conversation, and even though y'all already know, I don't go with this whole, at the end of the day, it don't matter to me whether somebody's a Jew or not. But if somebody's trying to make this whole thing that all blacks, translate slave trade, and all, of course I got a gripe with that. All right. Of course, a huge gripe with that. But I've had plenty of conversations with the guys. Yes, I do know a lot of their talking points and things like that. But I don't let my knowledge of knowing what they will go to or talk about cause me to be boastful and arrogant and demeaning towards them, to where now I've set myself up and I'm saying, listen, if it ain't peer reviewed, I don't want to hear it. Because you know why? Because I know that peer review stuff, Here's a bunch of bull crap, bro. It's bull crap. I know guys feel very, great about it, but it's bull crap. Meaning this: peer-reviewed don't determine what's true. It don't. That's the reality of peer-reviewed. It doesn't determine whether something's true or not. It don't. And in the many rejections that take place in the process of being peer-reviewed, doesn't prove everything rejected was false. It don't mean that. That's the reality. But he said, unless it's peer-reviewed and will go against that study that he came up or that he got from 2013 from Dwayne State University, don't say nothing to him. There's nothing you can say to him. That's what he was doing to them guys that night on Berean's channel. Now, to other Christians in the chat, they was like, oh, man, he's on their necks and blah, blah, blah. Nobody's seen the arrogant, boastful, and the degrading. Nobody's paying none of that attention. It's just, oh, he got knowledge, and it must be peer-reviewed, 100%. Yeah, peer-reviewed. So the question was asked to Dr. Pastor, because he's supposed to be a pastor too, Damon Richardson, is there anything that could come up later on that would contradict what you're bringing now? He doesn't answer it. He knows the answer, though. He knows reality. It could be something. But he doesn't answer whether it is possible or not. Instead, he says, well, that's a hypothetical. The reality is right now, nobody here is bringing up anything that would contradict 2013 study that I brought up, and there ain't been enough substantial evidence, claim, or whatever case is to substantiate what they're saying. And so he leaves it at that. Let's deal with peer-reviewed. All right. I'm going to show just a little thing here. We're going to watch a little thing right here. This is what, so when y'all hear him say, or anybody say, peer-reviewed, is it peer-reviewed? Is it peer-reviewed? Is it peer-reviewed? When y'all keep hearing them do that, this is what they're talking about.
Scholarly articles, academic articles, peer-reviewed articles. You may have heard these terms used by your professor, but what do they mean? Essentially, these are all different ways of describing the same thing, research articles that have been published in scholarly journals. But what is a research article, and how does it get published in a scholarly journal? First of all, the article reports a scholar's research practice and findings, and it's written with an audience of other researchers in mind. Finally, in order to be published and accepted by the scholarly community, the article must pass several quality tests. The most important of these tests is called peer review. We can get a better understanding of the role of peer review if we look at the academic publishing process as a whole. Let's imagine a researcher who wants to share a discovery with the academic community. To do this, he writes a draft article describing his research and findings and submits it for publication in a scholarly journal. Here's where the article has to pass its first test. The journal's editor reads over the article to decide whether it's a good fit for her journal. If it is, she sends copies of the article to a group of experts to evaluate the article's quality in a process called peer review. This is the article's second and most important test. These experts are the author's peers, since they're working in the same research area. And since they're making a judgment about the article, they're sometimes called referees. So peer-reviewed articles are sometimes called refereed articles. Each reviewer evaluates the article by asking questions to judge the quality and significance of the research. Questions like, what is this research about? Is it interesting? Is it important? Is the methodology sound? Are the conclusions logical? And are the findings original? Based on the answers to these questions, the reviewers decide whether the article is worthy of publication in the journal. They then make a recommendation to the editor, either approve the article for publication or reject it. Even if they recommend publishing the article, they usually expect the author to make revisions. The editor, however, makes the final determination whether the article should be approved, rejected, or revised. Rejection is common, though. The most prestigious journals are very selective about the articles they publish, so they tend to have high rejection rates. Some journals reject more than 90% of the submissions they receive. From the time the researcher first submits his draft article to the time it is finally published, several months or years may have elapsed. Once the journal is published, it is made available to subscribers, which are usually university libraries, because individual subscriptions are very expensive, often hundreds or thousands of dollars a year. By the way, like all established systems, the peer review system has its critics, and scholars continue to think about how the peer review process might be improved. The library has tools to help you find peer-reviewed research. If you want to know more about the peer review process or need help finding peer-reviewed articles, ask a librarian for help.
All right. So you guys see the process of what. So when y'all hear people say, is it peer reviewed? This is what they're talking about. Now, I want to highlight a couple things in this. All right. So person makes a discovery or some information they want to be published in an article. They bring it, as I said here, as they submit it, to be considered. Person decides, there's one person that decides whether that it'd be useful in their journal. That's the first thing. I hear what they're saying, but do I feel like this would be useful? And they use whatever standard they want to use to determine whether they believe it is useful for them or not. Not so much is it true or not, but will it be useful or not? And then they accept or reject. Then the things that are accepted goes to what they call peer review, which is a bunch of other people who are studying the same thing. All right, they didn't make the discovery that the person's submitting, but they're studying the same thing, and so they're, considered experts in the field. And so, as the thing said, they're sometimes called referees. All right, so then they determine, is this going to go through to the next stage or not? Right, and then after it goes to the editor person. Even after the referee even after the peer review says, yes, approve this. There's a final stage that even after the peer review people says yes or no, there's still this last go around that determines whether or not it's going to get published or not. It can still be rejected even after the peer review folks give it their thumbs up. And so even after the peer review people say, yeah, it can still be rejected and not be admitted into books in the universities. And so if it don't get added into the journals or the books in the universities, they're paying the money for it, sometimes that information can get just put online for free. All right. So this is why, like on the internet, where, unless you go into a college database to research things, when you just go to Google and you go to all these million different websites, and some of them, real obscure and things like that, and they're saying things, but it's not peer reviewed because they didn't go through the process, or they got rejected during the process, and so they just kind of put the information online on their own website or wherever. It doesn't mean that what they're saying is false or not. It just wasn't accepted in the process. Then you have those that have been peer reviewed. It doesn't mean it's necessarily true, but it passed through the useful test and people who wanted to make use of it. So that's why, like, when you go on Google and just go to random websites or Wikipedia or something, you'll find different things. But then there's some things like you won't rarely find because you'll only find it by going in a library or going into a school database. Then you'll find like this extra thing that you won't find, like just regularly searching through Google. So look at it as like when you're in high school and you got all the students, but then you got like the sorority clubs. Look at it like that. All right. Peer-reviewed writings and articles and stuff like the sororities in college. Everybody ain't part of it. Doesn't mean what they're doing is good. All right. There were some false gods and all that kind of stuff and doing hazings. But it's very prestigious. There's a little pride that come with it. And it's hard to get admitted into. But then you got the regular people who are, I'll use a perfect example. The thing with the takeoff situation or anybody else situation. There's a saying in the black community, the streets talk. And a lot of times you'll find out true information about what took place through random people just talking in the streets faster and before the news people who got to go through all this stuff before they can say something on the TV, a lot of times it's useful, but it's not foolproof. It's not 100%. Meaning something peer review could be useful, but it doesn't mean that it's true. All right? Some things may be useful that are peer reviewed, then other things that are actually lies, but yet pass the test are admitted too. So just because it was peer reviewed doesn't mean it's true. There's still discernment that has to be used even after something's been peer reviewed. So why am I saying this? The question was asked to Damon Richardson. Is there anything that could come up later on to contradict what he was bringing up from that study, from the peer-reviewed study from the college source that he was using? And he didn't answer it. He didn't tell the truth. Instead, he didn't give an answer at all. He said, "Well, that's a hypothetical." But the reality is they don't have evidence on their end, and nobody has contradicted what the Dwayne State University said. But that wasn't the question that was asked. The question was, is there something that could come up? The answer is yes, there is something that could come up. Because even in the peer-reviewed, as it mentioned, the process of something becoming peer-reviewed and being actually admitted into the books and to the colleges and the database, sometimes months, sometimes years pass before the thing is published. So let's stop there, because this is very important. That time frame is very important to this whole thing. Because let's use the Dwayne State University thing as an example, all right? Before that was publicized, and now you have this 2013 study, there was this lapse in time that took place, and you have this time frame before that. Now, before that, let's say the information, I'm hypothetically speaking, let's say the information said, it is possible that the blacks in America are Jews and blah, 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 and all the reasons why they said so. And it passed the thing, and it got peer-reviewed, and it's inside the college libraries. And so during that time, let's say that came out in 2010. So from 2010 to 2013, up to the point that this new study is published, everybody's going off of that peer-reviewed study, and people at that time are teaching, see, even they know, and this is peer-reviewed source. And so people are, unless it's peer-reviewed, you can't say nothing to me because blah, 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 blah. So they're using that. Then in 2013, there's an update. After further research, they're not Jews. Now the person that's, relying upon peer review, they have to change their stance because the review study requires that they do, because they got to go with the update. So, because they can't stay in the past with the old, outdated information, because the new person they're going to talk to are going to say there was an updated study. There's an updated study in 2013 that said they're not. So what is the truth? The former one? Are we dealing with a situation where the truth is really the former research? And maybe along the way somebody got craft and now they publicize this new one? Or is the update the truth? Which one's the truth? All right. So, and this is why scholars and theologians don't agree, even though they all got sources for days. That's all they base things off of, peer-reviewed studies and sources. Then why they don't all agree? If this peer-reviewed system determines what's actually factual, according to the way Damon Richardson acts. So reality is that even if the Black Hebrew Israelites had no peer-reviewed study to contradict what 2013 college said, because of what the peer review system is and how long it can take before there's an update to this thing, and because it doesn't determine what's true or false, a person that doesn't have something peer-reviewed can actually be telling the truth, while the person who got a peer-reviewed study they're referencing cannot be telling the truth. That's the point. So when the question is asked, is there anything that can come up later on? Well, right now, nothing else will come up. But that doesn't mean something can't come up. Because in 2017, there could be some updated thing. Or in 2023, there could be some new thing. Because people are always digging in the dirt. and they're always pricking blood, and they're always constantly researching more and more and more, and so there's always updates. So to have the attitude that was displayed, that took place right here,
where Israel Finkelstein's work?
I am, yes. But you're talking to, go ahead, not me. No,
that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, see that
That's
right
what
there?
I'm asking. Yeah, the Bible on earth.
Let me explain something to you. I have 9,000 books. 9,000.
I didn't ask you all of that, brother.
No,
I'm
no,
just
no.
asking you.
I'm telling y'all, when I started saying all them books in the background, it was because of this man right here. Now you see why. I got 9,000 books. None of all them 9,000 books, none of them pull you out of them stadiums and put down that cowboy hat and cowboy jersey and start rooting on people in contention and strife and rivalry against Christ's commandment. None of them 9,000 books pull you out of that. None of them 9,000 books cause you not to be boastful and arrogant and boasting about how many books you got, or, well, she about to come out your mouth right now.
Can I ask my question?
Hold on. The fact
I mean,
that
be
you
respectful though. No, I'm just asking
need you to know
to set up my question. I'm asking you to set up my question. Can have some decorum, brothers? Have some decorum.
No. Hold on.
Okay, are you familiar?
You know that when you're asking me questions, right? And which means that you've got to give me an opportunity to answer. Not only have I read Finkelstein, I'm just trying to let you know that you're talking to a very well-read individual. What I don't
know you personally, so that's why I asked you the question.
I got you, but all I'm looking for tonight, this is all I'm looking for.
I'm about to ask you. Can I ask you the question?
Oh, okay.
Are you familiar with his?
So at the end of the day, these guys using their talking points are not wasting time, whatever somebody want to say that they're doing. The thing that's being stood upon is shaky ground. It's not even firm. It's not even a rock. It's not even a rock. Standing upon peer-reviewed studies is not standing on a rock where you cannot fall, where something can't beat you, or you fall down with a great fall. Peer-reviewed can be updated and it slide from right up on your feet. So to be arrogant because you have a peer-reviewed study that supports what you're saying, the thing could be true and it can be used. It could be useful, but it doesn't mean what you're saying is true. And it doesn't mean that there's nothing that can't come up later on through peer review that'll contradict what you're saying. And God doesn't require his people to become theologians overnight. They have to do all this great study and keep up to date with peer review studies so they'll know how to operate and live their lives. And when it comes to whether somebody's a Jew or not, the Jews had registries. So unless you got a registry, there's no way you can dictate what tribe you came from. Now, this is why when it comes to the Black Hebrew Israelites movement, this is why the chart is so heavily emphasized. And those that don't use a chart, they just use scriptural verses to solidify who they are. Because once again, it's ingrained. Their whole belief system is based upon what they believe the Bible's saying, not historian, not peer-reviewed studies. All right? An arrogant, proud man because of owning 9,000 books, assuming being an intellect. Yes, absolutely. This is arrogant and boastfulness. And so when y'all hear me say all them books in the background, right? It may sound funny, but it means exactly what we're just seeing. Is that I was having discussions about contention and rivalry and the love of violence and MMA and all this stuff with men who I'm talking to got a bunch of books in the background. They seemingly read all the church fathers. They seemingly got every book for everything. And I'm like, man, how do you have so much time to read? Do they read all of it? Or they just get it and read a little piece out of it? I don't see them sitting and reading the entire thing, but just in case they do, and they've read it and studied every single piece of thing they got in their offices. All that reading. And yet when it comes to this righteous way of living, they're blind and can't discern it. I don't see nothing wrong with it. Or Elder Mike, who also got a bunch of books in the background too. Yeah, we talking about love. We talking about MMA and stuff. And he can sit there in your faces and say, that man that getting ready to pound on this man on the ground, you can do this and it not be hostility. How in the world, how does that happen? All this study, all this much study, but men don't know the right way to live. They know God said, don't be idolaters. They know God hates idols. But if a Christian was paid to play an idol on screen, on a TV, on a movie, to tell a dumb story, they'll exclude them from sin. And they'll say they're not committing idolatry. How is that possible? God hates the Egyptian gods. He judged Egypt. He said to have nothing to do with their gods. Don't even bring them in your house. Don't even admire them. Don't even ask about them. Yet later on in modern day, somebody say, hey, we want to tell a story about the ancient Egyptian gods, Ra and Bastet, his daughter, and we want you, sir, to play the Black Panther. And then all of a sudden, all of what God said go out the window for these guys with all these books. And they go, it's just a movie. And they don't think that the actor is sitting and making God mad because he's literally playing what God hates. That's why I say all them books in the background. I'm not anti-intellectual. I don't say don't read. But you should spend all your time and majority of your time meditating upon the law of the Lord that you may live upright and not being arrogant and boastful in your much knowledge and worldly intellect about the 9,000 books you got in the background or the 500 books you got in the background or snapping photos of the pile of books you just bought. Who I'm about to get my reader. And then when we talk about good versus evil, you blind and deaf and don't know the right way to go. And evil's an excuse for you. That's why I say all them books in the background, because he was demeaning these guys. It got so bad, Slick went off. Now, it was evil what Slick did, but this pastor was antagonizing him. Now, I want to show this. Because remember what true knowledge and wisdom is. It's not what Damon's doing. It's not the 9,000 books. It's not the peer-reviewed. It's the fearing God and keeping his commandments and operating in wisdom and in love for not just your neighbor, but your enemies too. But when you be arrogant and boastful and all this prideful stuff that's spilling out of his mouth, you're not getting anywhere from anybody. With anybody but other Christians who are blind to your acts. So, where is it? Give me a quick second. Here he is. And when this was happening, Berean didn't go, hey, this is ungodly. He didn't step in. He didn't mute nobody. He just let it go on and on and on and on. Damon didn't catch himself. Oh man, this is not right. He was antagonizing and provoking and keeping it going. It was funny to him. The other pastors that Berean was sharing their comments, everybody kept talking about, oh, Slick cussing now, he going off and stuff like that, pointing out Slick, but nobody's rebuking this pastor on there. Who's supposed to be above reproach? This is what happened. Fair use.
But Wiggins. But do you have the evidence though?
The Bible.
If you don't have the evidence.
The Bible.
If
I keep telling you, the Bible keep running over what I'm telling you. You know why? Because you want to trap us in the paradigm of this
just
DNA.
Like I said.
And the Bible doesn't talk about the
just
DNA.
Like I said.
You know what I'm saying? The Bible talks about the prophecy.
Community.
Amen.
Where is the evidence?
Wait. The evidence is the prophecy of the 12 tribes of Israel. And the prophecy of the thing, let me 20 seconds. It doesn't talk about DNA. I'm sick of you talking about
the evidence.
Stop. No evidence. DNA. Go sit that down somewhere. And get your doctor self back in the Bible. You said somebody else on the ask. Doctor, get your butt back in the Bible. Come on, dispensational Tim.
Yeah, I got a question. Damon Richardson, I'm a Christian, so I'm not coming with that. I got a serious question because I did want to ask you this once before. I've been looking for the Richard Carrier videos forever. Why can't we?
We don't need none. Now, how y'all experts on everything, but no scholars, no theologians?
Of the Most High Yah. That is the evidence.
Hold on, Bruce. I want this other brother to talk.
You keep hearing their responses, is what I started off saying. Everything is based upon what they believe the Bible prophecies are and not historical things. So they'll never get anywhere with each other because they're operating from a standpoint of the Bible prophecies say this. So it doesn't matter what anybody peer review says. And they're going to be skeptical of the peer reviews that don't agree with what they believe the Bible prophecy is saying, because in their sight, people are trying to like hide things from them. So this is why they're thinking like this. All right. So they're skeptical about anything that goes against what they're thinking and believing. Which is understood, because even on our end, if somebody was to try to convince us, as people have tried with their studies and all this stuff, that Jesus Christ didn't actually exist, we're the same way. It doesn't matter what they say. It don't matter what kind of book they write or evidence or peer review study. It doesn't matter, because we're skeptical of anything that comes against the knowledge of Christ. So for the people that are in the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, they're operating no different than the way Christians operate regarding Christ. All right. We actually do the same thing, but it's about different things. All right. So this is why they won't get anywhere. So with Damon Richardson, peer-reviewed standard and all this kind of stuff, he's not going to get anywhere with these guys, because everything will come back to prophecies for them. And to him, he's like, where's the evidence? Where's the peer review? Where's the contradiction to what I read? Like, he's going to be like that. So they're not going to get anywhere. But they want to keep having the conversation, keep, showboating the knowledge and all that other stuff and degrading one another. And all people can see is the sins of the Black Hebrew Israelites that are acting out of order and out of character. No one's rebuking Damon, at least openly. Maybe somebody get a text message afterwards. Hey, that wasn't right, bro. No, you should have stood him to his face when he was doing it. They be acting scary, bro. They be doing stuff openly for everybody. Just like when them dudes popping collars of idols on their shirts, and all the panel full of elders and pastors, and people laughing about it. Nobody's saying nothing. I say something, the whole world comes against me now. You didn't call me. You should have called me private. No, bro, you're doing it right now in front of 300 people. You always want things private all the time. No, you don't privately sin. You openly sin before everybody. When you're freaking gloating about idols, you did this in front of everybody. When you said two men could beat each other down and not be hostile, you did it in front of everybody. You don't need a private phone call. But this is what they keep wanting to do. You'd be surprised how many of these guys, they don't fellowship. They don't really view each other as brothers. They think each other are heretics. But every time you see them publicly, they'd be teaming up with Black Hebrew Israelites, so you think they're all in one accord. They not. It's chaotic. I'll tell y'all that right now. It's chaotic.
Talk about that DNA. Then I'm going to give it to Slick. Because I know Slick dealing with scripture. Go ahead, brother. Talk about that book.
Listen real close to this exchange right
here. He not me
unless you want to walk. At this point, hours done gone by. This constant cutting off and all that stuff. So finally, Slick gets on there, and this happens.
He walked away looking for more books.
Yeah, because that's all he can do. I mean,
well, let me reshare the thing, because I missed to push a button and it messed it up. Hold on. Fair use.
What do you want me to do? You want me to hold up a book too? What is that going to prove? I need to be
Brother Berean, Damon is talking 20 minutes saying the same thing. You know what I mean? All right, well, hold on. And guess what?
Can I?
No, Slick. All right, Slick. Go ahead, Slick. Please make it. Just come on, Slick. Don't.
Look, I'm not even. Look. I'm not even coming with no scripture. All I'm saying is this brother will not be quiet, man. Can somebody else say? Look, you about to talk again? You about to talk again? Shut up, man! You will not be quiet, dude. Be quiet. And then hold up, and then be quiet, man. Hey, yo, why you still talking, bro? You ain't talking enough, man. Look, no, I'm not mad. Hey, bro, look, you're supposed to be a scholar. No, hold up. You're supposed to be a scholar. You're supposed to be a Christian. You're supposed to be all of those things.
I want to pause right quick because this is what's before your face. Damon Richardson is a pastor. Alton's a minister. Berean, well, he used to be a pastor. Pastor Tim at the bottom right, he's a pastor. Keith Jefferson in the comment section, I believe he's a pastor too. You got all these leaders supposed to be representing Christ here, all these ministers. And you have this brother going crazy, and he's provoked to that craziness. It's not unwarranted. It's because Damon Richardson keeps on antagonizing them, and he keeps boasting in his knowledge, and it's annoying everybody. It's annoying Christians. And I ain't the only one. It was annoying Christians. And he kept on boasting about his books and his knowledge and peer review. And if you ain't got nothing that's going against my peer review, then, or anything peer review you bringing up, then don't talk to me. And he keeps cutting them off and not letting them talk. And so now people getting frustrated. Berean's letting it go on. And so it's happening, and people getting frustrated now. Temperatures rising, and people get fed up with Damon Richardson. He's a pastor who won't shut up and let the brother say something. Let him get a sentence out. Let him get 2 sentences out. The brothers pleaded for time to at least talk and get a sentence out. But Damon Richardson keep cutting him off because all he's concerned with is, where's your evidence? Where's your evidence? This is not how Christ dealt with the scribes or the Pharisees or anyone else, even though he knew everything in advance. He never acted once to any of these people. Half the time when you read the Bible, God, who knows everything, spoke as if he knew nothing when he spoke to men and when he spoke to angels. Though the apostles knew a lot. When they would go to some people, they said, when I came among you, I didn't come with big swelling words. I came simple, and all I acted as if I knew nothing but Christ crucified. Christ knew it was in people's minds and hearts, but he still let the situation develop. And then he used wisdom to convince them of their sins. It's not about information. Peer reviewed. Are you bringing any evidence forth? That's why you shut up. Be quick to listen. Slow to speak. Not quick to speak. Slow to speak. Because even if they're going to say something you already know in advance, you can use what they're saying to convince them of their sins and save their souls. And say you walk around, I got $9,000, and unless it's peer reviewed, you can't say anything to me. Where's your evidence? And then he dies because he's in sin, and then you die because you're in sin. And no one gets helped. And then you lead the hundreds of people watching this into laughing about something that's evil going on. And you being a pastor, leading the charge in it because you think it's funny. This man is in his flesh. He's all upset because you won't shut up long enough so he could talk. And then when he finally blows up, you're like, man, shut up, man. You laughing and you continue to antagonize him. You big mad. You big mad. You know, if you do that in the street, people end up killing you. Like if somebody's angry and you sit there and you laughing in their face, and you sipping on, oh, you mad? Let me eat my orange. And you're doing like that, bro, they could kill you. They kill you, man, because you're provoking them to wrath. Acting foolish. And your death be because of your own sins. So the brother's going crazy now. He's mad because he can't talk. He's trying to get a thought out, but he keeps getting cut off. It's messing with his mind. So he blows up. And this is Damon's reaction.
Let me talk, bro. You're supposed to be you still, hey, Brother Berean, come on, man. Seriously, man. You would have, hey, look, you would have been, hey, Brother Berean, you would have been muted my mic, man. Hey, bro, would you please be quiet? You're supposed to be every. Hey, come on, man. All I'm saying, look, all I'm saying is this dude is supposed to be every. Man, look, you still talking, man.
All these Christians. Now, the way the app works, by the way, brothers and sisters, because me and Marie, we use the same app when we go live. You won't see no comment unless I highlight it and put it on the screen. Like if I do this. It won't happen unless I put it on there. You can make all the comments you want. But unless I click on you, you ain't popping up on my screen. So while all this is going crazy, and y'all keep seeing those comments pop up, and they say, you mad, and people are like picking on Slick because how he's reacting. Berean's clicking on those on purpose. No different than when I do this. None of rebuke to Damon. Everything's about the Black Israelites and, oh, you mad, and Berean thinks it's funny. That keeps on antagonizing. This is evil. None of the pastors say anything to Damon. This is ungodly, bro. Shut up. Let him talk. Even if you already know in advance what he may say. Follow the example of Christ. But instead, in your mind, they ain't got no evidence. I got the proof. They ain't got nothing. They ain't got no peer review. There's nothing they can say to me. And therefore, you got to keep rubbing that in. You got the right one tonight. And I got 9,000 books. And I'm well read. Where my Cowboy jersey at, though? Where my Cowboy jersey? As soon as that game come on, I'm going, get him, get him, get him. How read are you then? Oh, I got all these degrees and all this other stuff. Soon MMA fight come on, get him. How read are you then? The demonic powers that are laughing while this exchange is going on and God being angry, they don't care what y'all talking about. The Lord don't care what right information Damon Richardson think he got because the Lord is looking at his actions and how he's dealing with his enemy. And the Lord is seeing his arrogance and his boastfulness. And he's watching all the other Christians around, rooting them on. The Lord's looking at all of that. And all people care about is the information, the information. The apostle already told you. You may have knowledge that other men don't got. Don't let that puff you up. But love buildeth up. Love edifies. I mean, conversations I get, I was in the thing. Every scripture that they're going to go to, I know where they're going to go to. But I don't go, listen here, I already know where you're going at, bro. So, hey, listen, man, you can't say nothing to me. And so I just keep over-talking them because I've been in it and I know what they're going to say. I act as, y'all have watched the conversations. Well, let's go to Deuteronomy 28, 49, then Pastor J, Brother J. I'm like, all right, we go. Let him make his point. Then I'll respond to him. So, because it may be something in what he said that I may be able to use, that then by wisdom, be able to, because at the end of the day, it ain't about the information. I don't care about that part of it. But it's about whether or not I'll be able to save your soul or not. So while you're believing a certain thing and we talking and you might say something that even though I've spoken to 30 other people who went to that same talking point, but you yourself may say something that they didn't say in the midst of you trying to explain that so well that I'll be able to point to, and you'll be like, oh, man. And I may be able to convince you and not worse, able to convince the other person, the other people I've spoken to in the past who all went to the same talking point. But if I just got this attitude of, you can't tell me nothing, I'm only here to answer questions, and if it ain't peer-reviewed, you ain't got nothing to say to me, and I want you to know when you ask me questions, I'm well-studied. I got 9,000 bucks. And then when somebody on my own team asks me, is there anything else that come up later on that contradict what you say? You know the truth of the answer. The answer is yes. There is something that can. See, if you operate in that truth and reality, because that's not hypothetical, that's the actual reality of what peer review is. There is possible that a couple of years later on, something else may come that contradict what I'm saying right now. It is possible. All right. It's already existing in other things that are peer reviewed and among theologians and scholars. They don't even all agree to the peer reviewed process. So yes, it is very possible. All right. Now, right now, there's nothing that contradicts it, but it could be something that comes contradict it. But if you have that idea, if you know that a reality, you won't be all prideful standing on top of that box. Because you know at any moment it can break and slide from right under your feet. So, but men in their intellect, they get puffed up and they feel important and they swoo people with the big words and things, processes that people don't even know about and things like that. So, but all this is going on, all this evil going on, and this is the reaction from the person with the truth. Remember, Damon Richardson, the one with the knowledge, he's the one with the truth.
Brother Berean, man, this don't make no sense right here, man.
Here's why.
I'm mad because you won't shut the hell up, bro. Stop acting like a kid, man. Now look, hey, brother Berean, that was me. You still talking, man. Now you claim. Look, man, won't you be quiet, man? Look, you claim. Look, bro. You claim that Israelites is the worst people on this earth, right? And we always doing stuff wrong. But who the one ain't showing no decorum right now? Every time, listen, Berean. Every time one of us.
See, this is annoying to me because all this time, this whole evil going on, antagonizing going on, Slick going crazy, Damon Richardson acting out of character too. Everybody's sinning right now. Nobody says no. Everybody's just watching it happen, and then Slick makes a statement. You think black Israelites that worst people in the world? Dan Berean unmutes. Now you want to say something? He ain't say that. Why nobody corrected this man? Not no private conversation, not no text. But I'm talking about in the faces of the hundreds of people that was watching live while this was going on. And while Berean's in the back chat, clicking on the comments, highlighting Slick going crazy. This is not how we to deal with these people.
Let's try to talk. This dude cut us off. You still talking, dude. And not only that. Man, look, man. This don't make no sense right here, man. You a child. Hey, I thought you was a pastor, dude. I thought you was a pastor. I can't tell. This what you do to your congregation. This what you do to your congregation. When they trying to talk, you talk over them. You proving what you.
I'm gonna tell you right now, brothers and sisters. I'm gonna tell you right now. All right. If this in the streets or anywhere like that, bro, that's happening right now would have been got Damon Richardson slapped, beat up, shot, stabbed, something. If something would have happened, he wouldn't have been able to stand in a person's face while they're going crazy. And say, man, won't you shut up? Let me talk. And he's in their face. You big man, man. You big man, me, my orange. Huh? I'm going to tell you right now. He would have been slapped the taste out of his mouth. If any of your children did that to you, you slap them or you send them in. Who you talk to? Be quiet. I'm talking. Another man starts speaking and want to say something to you, even if you know in advance what he's going to say, let the man get words out of his mouth. But you give you big man, you just keep antagonizing, provoking them, provoking a reaction out of them. That's the devil. That's the flesh. All these ministers of past, nobody saying nothing. The same way they ain't say nothing when they was gloating about them idols from the nation, they ain't say nothing. The same way they ain't say nothing when we was talking about them MMA fighters beating each other down for money and notoriety. They ain't say nothing then. But they're defenders of the faith. But every time it comes time to defend the thing, they don't say nothing. The saddest part of all is this: how people continue to call people Christians, even when they don't match what God has spoken a believer to be. Remember that God does the work, cannot fail. Sorry. That is the sad part. But that's because they fall for the okie doke. That they keep on with that we ain't gonna agree about everything, essentials, non-essentials, bull crap. They've accepted that. But this is evil. And this comes from a pastor. Now remember, Hold on. Excuse me. This is a trustworthy saying. If someone aspires to be a church leader, he desires an honorable position. So a church leader must be a man whose life is above reproach. He must be faithful to his wife. He must exercise self-control, live wisely, and have a good reputation. He must enjoy having guests in his home, and he must be able to teach. He must not be a heavy drinker or be violent or a person that loves strife and contention. He must be gentle, not quarrelsome, and not love money. It's against the very character of pastors and elders and overseers to be antagonizing folks, and they're going crazy, and you big mad, you big mad. That's what the devil does. He get the person riled up, and then he gets them riled up in their flesh already, and then he stands on the other side to another person, and he's like, yeah, you big mad, bro. Keep feeding that flame. Yeah, you big mad, bro. I know you big mad, bro. Hey, you ain't gonna shut me up, though. Yeah, watch this. Watch this. It's on there. Yeah, you ain't got no evidence, though. Antagonizing, provoking a reaction out of a man. Then when the man give you that reaction, you're searching for it, because your actions are searching for that reaction. Then when he gets it, Berean, the other Christians in the comment section are quick to jump on that. Look, that's evil. The devil's coming out. But nobody's saying the devil is operating through Damon when he's provoking this man to wrath. Nobody's saying the devil's working there. Because why? No, the devil can't be working there because he's got the evidence. He's got the knowledge. He's got the 9,000 books. He's got the peer-reviewed study. Openly rebuke Slick. Privately maybe rebuke Damon. Send a text, man, you know that wasn't right how you dealt with Slick tonight. But when Slick's going crazy, the comments being highlighted, people are unmuting, saying things to him. Me and Slick stand on opposite ends of the spectrum. But that's not how you to deal with them. This is evil. And just as Slick was being evil in his reaction, though provoked, it was still an evil response. It was still from his human nature. Pastor Damon was equally in it. As a matter of fact, he was worse in it. Why? Because when Slick was going crazy, everybody was highlighting it. When Damon was acting like the devil, everybody acted like he was acting like God. Nobody rebuked him. No one said it was evil. Nobody highlighted a comment on the screen and said, this is ungodly for a man of God. Nobody said that. He was worse because he professed to be a child of light. And yet, this is what he's doing. Christ never did this. This ain't new. This is common.
Let me talk. Why I can't talk?
You are mad.
Why can't I
bring evidence? You are
man.
mad.
No, he don't believe. Hey, look, bro.
Damon's so caught up in his intellect, he thinks the brother just reacting like this because he ain't got no evidence. Maybe, as the brother said when he came on, he acting like this because you won't be quiet and let people talk. That in itself is so annoying. He can't just be mad about that. No, you really mad because you ain't got no evidence. Like a little child. Unable to see the evil they're doing, how they're provoking somebody to wrath, and not even hearing the complaint of the person. Because instead, it's just like them Christians that be acting about Black Hebrew Israelites, and I tell them all the time, the people that lead a church and go to the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, do you actually listen to their complaints when they say why they left the church? Because a lot of the Christians be acting like the church is all right, and even though there's evils and corruptions everywhere, you won't find a perfect church, yet when somebody leaves it, it's never because of the church's problem. You got some ignorant Christians walking around talking about, there's no such thing as church hurt. There's no church hurt. You love because you hated Christ. Like that's what they do. They ain't it because they pagans. Ain't it because this person can't no longer fellowship among them because this church is actually corrupt. It's never that. It's just that person did evil. That person is wrong. We good. Though we pagan, but it don't matter what the origins was because that's not why we do it. Even though it's all of this stuff going on, it's never their fault. It's always the other person who left. So when people go into the Black Hebrew Israelite movement, I said, man, most of the people that go into this movement, They're just looking for order. That's why everybody runs to Moses. When you're ignorant, you go to school. When you're ignorant of God, God sends you to the schoolmaster. You understand? When you're ignorant of God, God sends you to the schoolmaster. That's why I said a lot of these people that end up in the movement under Moses, they're in better shape than them Christians in the corrupt churches who let go of the gospel of Christ and perverts it. Because at least for these people in this movement and in them camps and stuff like that, worrying about feast days and stuff, at least they learn the severity of God, the seriousness of keeping God's commandments. And though they be blind right now to God's righteousness, which is Christ, they're under the schoolmaster that prepared a way to Christ for them. Versus the churches that people jumping up and down, oh, the Lord, hallelujah, and all this, and they're pagans. They're in the theaters. They Thor fans. They're idol fans. They love violence and contention and strife and all this, and then they tell themselves they're followers of Christ. They're in worse condition than the people in them camps under Moses. They're worse. So God in his sovereignty, as he's shown in all other matters of life, when evil takes place, and men have their own reasons for why they're doing the evil stuff, but God always got a good reason for it. These people skedaddle out of them pagan churches. They go into them camps. Yeah, they go into it. Yeah, they deceived and all this stuff for a while. Some people come out. Some people don't. That's life. Because the Lord shows mercy who he wants. And so they go up under this. But man, how the Lord saved them out of that pagan environment, brought them under the law. They toiled under that for a while. They realized the severity of God. They learned God's commandments, how they should follow him, and how they shouldn't veer from the left or to the right, because the churches wasn't telling them that. And they go, don't veer from the left or the right. They're so concerned it's the law, the law, the law, the law. And then one day God has mercy and they realize God's righteousness of Christ. And they come out from under the law, but they don't go into that pagan liberty that Christians claim they got, where they can be all in these theaters and cheering on contention and rivalry, and up in them and on stage acting like idols and being mistresses and all that kind of stuff, and lying and stealing and murdering in these dumb plays and things like that, or being Tyler Perry, who's supposed to be a Christian dressing like a woman. They won't be like that. They won't be Judaized any longer, and they ain't over libertized on the other end. So though they be deceived for a time, God got a good purpose in it. You know why? You know an example? Myself is an example. I grew up in church. My man, I got bishops, pastors in my family. But guess what we was doing while I was growing up? Halloween come around, we at Halloween fests. We dressed up in them little costumes. We trick-or-treating. We got the jack-o'-lantern with the guy who made the deal for the devil and all that kind of dumb stuff. We had that. You know what? What else I was in? I was in rivalry and strife and contention. I was a WWE fan. The Rock talking about jabroni and all that stuff, and you can't see me, all that boasting and arrogance, and I was right there, front row. Slamming my cousins down, giving them busted lips, because we're trying to imitate the moves. Almost sent them to the hospital one night. I was right there, front row. Guess what I was doing while I was playing the keyboard at church? I was an R&B producer and artist, and I was ripping my shirt off on stage and humping the ground, making all the girls go, ah. That's what I was doing. And guess who was in the crowd supporting me? Other Christians. And guess who put on the event? My Christian cousin. That's where I was at. I lived the life of a homemonger. Brought different girls in and out of church, or the church services. People knew who we was dealing with. We weren't married. One night, I can remember like it was yesterday. We went on a church, little, I don't know, it was a revival or something. Some little conference we went to at this hotel. I can't remember where it was at, but it was a hotel. There was this lady that worked at the front desk. She was married. I was not married because I was like 18 or 19 years old. And on the church trip, slept with another man's wife, came into the room with my bishop, now, no, he's not a bishop, elder cousin, and my other cousins in the room. I come in, they know I was messing with this lady all night. I come in the room, and then I tell them about it. Everybody laughs. No rebuke, no sit down, nothing. And guess what we did the next night? Because it was a 3-day service. I was right there on the keyboard. Doom, 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 doom. You got the spirit of David, huh? Same stuff. And then one day, while on the keyboard, in church, a hole opened up in my body. I felt like a missing hole somewhere. It just came out of nowhere. And the thought came to my, this can't be it. This can't be what being a Christian is. Just come to church and sing songs and choir practice and play keyboard and go home and just do what you want to do. I done been to Bible class. I know Abraham had many sons, as many sons as father Abraham. I was at Vacation Bible School every year. But this can't be it. So then I lead the church. Eventually, I learned about, Christ and the Jew and start to hear about the laws of God and the feast days and stuff, not through the Black Hebrew Israelites, but I was part of a Messianic Jewish congregation, was mixed up Jews and, congregation mixed with Jews and Christians. That's where I first started learning about the customs. But because of my ignorance, I became infatuated with the law of Moses. And I thought the law was going to save me. So when the rabbi said, the law don't save you, I got offended and I left. And so I started looking for an Orthodox Jewish synagogue because I wanted to convert to full-fledged Judaism. But thank God he saved me from myself. Because had I gone under that system, with circumcision, I made myself a debtor to do the entire thing. And Christ was no effect. So God put that, I didn't know at that time, but now I know it. God made it impossible for me to go that way. Because when I was a baby, I was already circumcised, just normally. In America, most of the parents do that. So I hit a brick wall. I'm like, okay, well, wait, do I get double circumcised? How do I go about this? So I never pursued to become converted into Judaism and undergo physical circumcision and make myself a debtor to do the whole law. God saved me from that. At that time, I'm just like, oh, man, how I deal with this? So, but I still was ignorant, still was like the law, but the Lord prevented that I didn't go through that circumcision custom and things like that. And so later on, a couple months down the road, then I come across IUIC. Then I hear about the law, and if you don't do this, you walk a charcoal block. I'm like, yeah, the law. And then they're like, and you blacks, Hispanics, and Americans, y'all the true Jews. What? So I ain't got to get circumcised? So God temporarily placed me in the Black Hebrew Israelite movement. And I tore under this broken system of Moses. But under that broken system, I learned a lot. I learned a lot of lies, but I learned a lot of things about God too that I didn't learn growing up. And so through that toiling under Moses and bringing myself into bondage under the law, I realized the severity of God and how serious he is. And it laid claim into them feast days. So if you don't do them at the point in time, you should be cut off. And I read and was taught in the law how God cut this person off because they didn't do that. How the Lord kept that man because he was God on the Sabbath day. How God did this to the Israelites because they didn't keep the commandments. And how they did that and this and that. And I learned the severity of God and how you better do what he said. At the time he said to do it. So you to be very concerned. I was there when they bought the wrong bread for the Feast of Unleavened Bread. And we thought we were eating unleavened bread. But we find out it was leavened bread. And everybody in the school went crazy. Everybody was scared. Because we thought we was going to get cut off and destroyed by God. And so everybody went to the elders and was like, what are we going to do? And they were upset with the sisters who bought the wrong bread and all this other stuff. And then, but they said, oh, God, have mercy. So we just continued on. No lightning came out the sky. We're still in American slavery already. What are we going to do? Be dispersed in disbursement? So we continue on. But I learned while under that system, the fear of God. To do what it is they want or else. Don't veer out to the left or the right. So we try to operate under that broken Mosaic system. And then one day, Nathaniel stands up during the Feast of Tabernacles in 2016 and says, it was revealed to him by the Lord that the new moon is actually the full moon. And my whole world shattered. And a lot of people wondered, what? It's just a new moon. And they had a whole bunch of people that were like, oh, thank the Lord for the revelation and blah, blah. And they were just going on with it. And I was stuck. Why was I stuck? I was stuck because in the law of God, God said, keep these feasts at the appointed time, lest ye be cut off. And for the years I have been in there up to this point, we were told we were keeping the feast. Every time we got to the new moon, which at that time was dark, every time that happened, we had the new moon service. We would blow the trumpet, the horns, the shofar. We would blow the shofar horn, up to the moon, and then and that'll start our count for the month. And depending on what month we on, will determine the feast that we get to during the month, according to the scriptures. And when the feast would come, we'd observe it. And we pack ourselves on the back. Yeah, we kept the feast. And we'd be online. And be like, you Christians don't keep the law of God. We keep the law of God. Blah, 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 blah. And we'd tell people on the streets, you got to come back to who you are. And you got to come back to these law, statute, commandments. And at that time, when we would tell them to come back to law, statute, commandments, we were bringing them back to those customs based upon counting from the dark moon. So when the people would come, they would come from the dark moon. We get to the feast days. We all thought we was doing good. Now all of a sudden, he wakes up one day, not really one day. It was actually a year process, and all the leaders was in on it. But the point is that after a year of going back and forth, they finally bring it forth to everybody else. It's actually full moon. Full moon and dark moon ain't the same moon. They're two different phases of the moon, and they're 2 weeks apart. What that means is, based off his revelation from God, is that the entire time that they have been a school, and that's 20, 30 years, whatever. And the amount of time that I had been in there, which at that point was like 3.5, close to 4 years. We ain't never observed the feast days according to God. We never did it because we always got there at the wrong time. We always got there late or too early. We never got there at the appointed time. So that means we never did it. So all the times that we kept saying we did, and all the boasting and arrogance that we had while doing it, so-called, was actually, we were actually deceiving ourselves. We were actually deceived. And they were deceiving us because they were the teachers. So the Lord used that very thing from me learning the fear of God and how serious you're supposed to be and not veer from the left or the right. He used that very same thing to not allow me to get swept away with the rest of them. That was just like, oh, thank the Lord for the revelation. Instead, I realized our hypocrisies and our sin. And how we actually not done it. And so through that, long story, a couple months goes by before I actually leave out the movement. I left from them after that, but I didn't leave the movement until another 6 months after that. But eventually, the Lord delivered me out of that whole thing altogether. But my point is that, and since coming out of that, I haven't been Judaized on one end when I came to the knowledge of Christ. And I ain't gone into this perverted Christian liberty that people teach about today that allows them to go into these falsehoods and things like that. When I first came to Christ, I was still ignorant about a lot of these things because most preachers, they wasn't teaching about the theaters and the gravity of evil and how it integrates everything and how you're actually sinning against God when you're acting as idols or when you're acting out plays and you're being a mistress and you're being a man dressed as a woman or you're lying and you're doing the same things you know that you're not supposed to do. But they convinced you that for a job and a paycheck, you're not actually sinning. You know you're to love your neighbor, your enemy, but for sport, they convinced you that it's not assault. You're not assaulting him when you're beating him up in the ring, even though you can cause the same bodily injury to him, doing the same exact things to him that you could do to him for free in the streets and go to jail for it. But they don't tell you that. Instead, it's for sport, it's for entertainment. And a lot of these preachers are just blind followers of this, but they claim to be leaders of light. They're blind leaders with 9,000 books in the background. And so not being into the perverted Christian liberty, but not being Judaized on the other end. I didn't learn that growing up. When I grew up, it was over Christian liberty. And when I say over Christian, I mean over Christian liberty. A perverted Christian liberty. And so the Lord in his sovereignty, using my own ignorance and the evils of other men, allowed me to be the seed right up under Moses for a time. And then he had mercy on me later on to reveal Christ to me. And so now, through time and all that, now the Lord is finally, has now called me to something that I never wanted to be. I didn't volunteer, but called me to be a shepherd. And now, a lot, if not most, of the members of the community here in Texas is from the movement. And then you got other people from different states that listen and things like that. And some have relocated here and all this other stuff. But the point is that I didn't know that this is all in the Lord's plan and all that kind of stuff. You can only live in time as things are happening. I'm only a man. I can't foresee the future. So unless the Lord reveals it. And he didn't reveal all this would happen. So, but the point is that, so now looking back and talking to those that's in the movement, as much as it annoys my soul to hear those same old lies and to see people deceive by it, I know the mindset and the reason why they're doing this and what they're thinking and feeling when they're saying it. It's not just about knowledge and what they're reading on a verse on a page. I know all the feelings and emotions, all the stuff involved with it because I experienced it. So there's a level of compassion and understanding that I have that a lot of these other guys who've never been in it don't have. And it's not just me because it's other guys that came out like myself. But we operate in a different mode than a lot of the other guys who've never been in it. And so they just have an annoyance because of what the guys are saying. And so when you have these conversations, even though I already know the precept packet, I already know it. And so I know they're run down. When they ask certain questions, I'm not ignorant about it. When they go, well, what is sin? I know that it's not just breaking up the law of God. Though that is the definition of sin, I know that their purpose in asking me that is because they want to establish that the law was only given to Israel. And even though I know that, and I know they're deceived by their understanding about this, yet you still let them talk and let them go ahead and make their point. Because then after that, after they've said sin is on, the law has only been given to Israel, only Israel can sin, and therefore they die for your sin. That's what the Bible says. That Jesus died for the sins of his people, and his people is Israel, because they're the only ones got the law, and that's the only way you can sin. After they finish making that whole point, I'm like, okay, well, brother, let me ask you a question. When Moses took the children of Israel to the land, what did he say about those other nations and why they were being cast out of there? What do you mean, man? The nations, the Jebusites, the Hittites, Perizzites. What did he say about them as to why they were getting thrown out? All right, let's go to the law. Let's see what he said. What did Moses say? He said, he told the children of Israel, don't say in your hearts because your righteousness or you're so good that you're getting this land. It's because of the sins of the other people that the Lord's casting them out. And because of the oath that he made to your forefathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So I asked him then, what sin did they commit? Because this is sin, the breaking of God's law. What law did they get from God that they broke, that the Lord said they sinned? Because the point is, it's not just to say you dumb, you don't know what you're talking about. The point is to get them to see is that their understanding of when David said what he said in Psalms 147, 19-20 about, he showeth his word unto Jacob, his statute, judgment unto Israel. The other nations, they don't know it, and his judgment, they don't know it. Praise you, the Lord. When he said that, they need to understand that they're understanding what David is saying is wrong. Yes, they received the law given from Moses, and God didn't do that to any other nation. That's true. That part you understand is true. But when you're falling off in your understanding and making this false claim about the nations and sin and all this other stuff, it's your idea that the nations didn't receive no law from God. And that when it comes to being judged by God, they ain't never been judged. That's not the judgments that David is talking about. Because you have God literally dispersing people right before your eyesight in the land. I mean, in the curses it says, I'll put on you the botches of Egypt. So the Egyptians had it first. So it's not saying judgments in terms of God's like wrath and being dispersed and going into slavery. It's not talking about that. It was talking about the judgments, talking about the sacrifices and the things that would make the people clean. Like when people would sin, they had the different things in place, how they should govern themselves. And those judgments the nations didn't have. So when the people was defiled by their uncleanness of the month, like with females, the nations didn't have turtle doves and pigeons they can come and offer to God. And, it didn't have that. Those judgments for those uncleanness things and those sins that they would have. The nations didn't have that. The Israelites did. But when it comes to God's wrath of judgment, dispersing of people, famine, drought, pestilence, going to slavery, kids taken away and stuff like that, the nations, everybody's been through it. All right? Everybody's been through it. So you need to understand that God gave all the nations a law because there's only one God that exists. And when they were made, the law of not being idolaters was immediately established in all creation, for there was only one God that exists, and Adam and Eve was commanded to follow him only in the garden. So to follow any other God, which is idolatry, is evil for all nations, for God gave that commandment to everybody. That's why the Lord detests the nations in the Bible. They say provoke him to wrath. You can't provoke God to wrath unless you're sinning against him. But you can't sin against him unless you have a law that he's given to you. And God only gives a law because the law is to highlight how righteous he is and how you should imitate him. They don't understand that. And Adam don't want to understand that. They think it's unfair if God has mercy on the white man. It's unfair in their sight that the white man could do this evil and this evil and this evil to us and this did this to us and they stole our kids and all this other stuff. It's evil for them to just turn around and get mercy and get saved. That's not right. And through their foolish ignorance and selfish ambition, they forgot about themselves. For Christ himself has said, the Jew, right? The black man. Even he said himself in his parable about the unmerciful servant is that man's sins before God is worse than any sin any other human being could do to you. So if it's unfair for the white man to get mercy from God to be saved because of the sins he did to other humans, how is it fair for you to get mercy? It ain't fair for you to get mercy either. For your sins to God, black man, black Jew, whatever, your sins before God is way worse than anything any white man has ever done to blacks. Yet you ask God for mercy from your greater debt, but you think it's unfair if God forgives them for their lesser debt. Who deserved forgiveness? That's the first thing. Who deserves mercy? That ain't something that's owed to somebody. That's by promise, based off the kindness of the individual who gives it hard. So they got to understand that. But in letting them talk, even if you know in advance what they're going to say, and letting them talk, then the Spirit can give you wisdom of what to use and what they said to hopefully save their souls. That's the whole point. The whole point. I ain't trying to make them scholars. I ain't trying to make them go into a library somewhere and do all this deep research and trying to find all this peer-reviewed studies. I ain't trying to do that. I could care less because later on, 5 years from now, just like in the medical thing, they can say, oh, well, if you got this problem, this study, this is the problem. Why? So you should stop eating this. You should stop eating that. Well, here's the problem. Here's the problem. For example, let's use shrimp. Shrimp is high in what? Cholesterol? Okay. So if you got high cholesterol, they'll tell you, don't eat shrimp. So it's high cholesterol. Okay, that makes sense. Here's the problem. Well, if you got a combination of problems, meaning if you're not a healthy person, the only problem you got is high cholesterol, and you just stop eating shrimp, you good. Well, okay. But what if you're somebody who's low on cholesterol? What if you're somebody who got high cholesterol, but you also got a deficiency in this other thing? The problem is according to the study for that other thing that you're deficient in, shrimp is one of the recommended things to eat. So do I concern myself with the lesser thing and eat the shrimp and then possibly make the bigger thing worse? Oh, how should I go about this? Because on one end, I'm not to eat it. On the other end, it's recommended. Well, then I just won't eat it. I'll eat something else. But the problem is that other thing is also on the list of the other thing to avoid. So, and it's wisdom. Wisdom is needed. Everybody's like information. It's wisdom is needed. In service of God, wisdom is needed. Not just information. We have discussions with these brothers who are like, they believe it's prophecy that's going on. So it doesn't require any historical backing. And for them to believe that everybody's hiding everything from them or trying to distort it, they're not going to believe your dumb peer studies. And then when they find out that your peer studies is subject to change, depending on some research that comes later, they're definitely not going to listen to you. So this is why Christ didn't command Christians to go out and be the great debaters of history. He said to go out, preach the gospel, and then correct those that oppose the gospel, and then and rid the evil people from among yourselves. Here's the problem. Let me put this back on my screen right quick. I saw that question, Tar. So I'll answer that in a second. Here's the problem. On the screen. Now, I haven't heard anybody openly denounce this. So if there's an update, please update me in the comment section. But on the screen right now, you got one being prideful and arrogant about knowledge and degrading and antagonizing and provoking people to wrath. Who's a pastor? You got another pastor at the bottom who's a fan of idols all right, who flashed it before everybody's eyesight and laughed about it when he had his Black Panther Bastet images. All right. You got Alton, who, among some other things, also is a Black Panthers fan and gloats about it. Bought the shirt merchandise and popped his collar about it in front of everybody. Him and Pastor Tim enjoyed the laugh about it because it was funny. It's just a movie to them. So here's the problem. During the time of the apostles, all right, and we still should be operating like that. But during the time of the apostles, when they would appoint men and they'd be like the elders and pastors and people like that, and when they thought about people defending the faith, it wasn't people who would be perverting the faith and living these outward evil lives and supporting abominable things in God's sight. These men doing these things, if they don't cast them away, if they're still fans and they're still supporting it, and the stupid, matter of fact, today it dropped, Black Panther 2. If they're fans of that and they're still going to the theaters, which the apostles never allowed, and they're still being fans of idols, which they know they're not to be, and if they're making excuses for evil, as they constantly always do, and they're destroying people by way of their knowledge and stuff like that, like they continue to do, and they continue in this endless genealogy debate and the strivings about history and things that are subject to change and are not concrete things, and they continue in those ways which only produce ungodliness, these are their leaders. That's the problem. They're the leaders. They wouldn't even be viewed as pastors and elders in the apostles' sight. Or at the very least, if they were appointed, they'd be rebuked. So they'd be sound in faith. The apostles weren't cowboy fans, and if they lived during that, of course they weren't cowboy fans because they weren't cowboy fans back then. But they had sports. They had the races. They had the stadiums. They had the Olympics. They weren't fans. They didn't even go. And they told other Christians not to go. Why? Because full of idolatry and paganism and immorality. They definitely wouldn't have been no fans of no super Egyptian gods in those stupid films and all that kind of stuff. But these guys are. But these are the leaders. So the people are going to follow their examples. You got apostles canceling church because WWE came to town. They want to go sit front row to that madness. So they cancel church so they can go. Some of them invite the congregation over to the house and they participate in this. Matter of fact, they had some conference or something like that that went on. Another minister showed it to me. They were sitting at the table playing spades. We know what happened during spades. Beyond the strife and contention and all that. We talking about the boasting, arrogance, and all that other stuff that comes up. But nobody talks about or highlight these things. You know, it's just sport. It's just sport. But these are the leaders. And they're doing things that apostles never would have done and wouldn't allow. So how would you view these men? How would you view those who pop their collar and tip their hat to lies from demons? Men who love strife and who love quarrel, how would it process pastors or bishops or whoever who are sitting literally in our faces before 100 something people, or in this case 200, almost 300 people that night, antagonizing people, provoking them to wrath over and over and all night, over and over and over. You big mad, let me sip my drink. You ain't got no evidence, and you keep on mocking and antagonizing them, and nobody's rebuking it. How would you view that? Or are we supposed to go blind because, hey, they ain't got no evidence? This is not the way that we act. It's evil. This is this clip of something that came across my attention on Instagram that I want to show. And I'll kind of end on this point. Where is it? I ain't gonna be able to get to everything here. But I want to use this to make a point. All right, fair use. Fair use.
We fall down sometimes, but we get up for the sake but it didn't stay there. And God.
So this song is very prevalent and popular among the churches. We fall down, but we get up. For a saint is just a sinner who fell down, but got up. So the message is obviously taking this cue from when it talks about a righteous man falls 7 times, but gets back up. The wicked wallow in the mud. The we fall down is supposed to mean, fall short of glory of God, we sinned. And to get back up is like recover, get back up, walk the righteous path. I'm not going to nitpick everything about the song and all that stuff. I only play this to make a point about everything that was being said today. Is you can't get up when you're ignorant and or blind to righteousness. So for example, if falling down is sin, and let's say the sin is contention and strife, rivalry, violence, not love your neighbor. So that's how you fell. All right. So you fell to not love your neighbor, which would be hating your neighbor. The only way you can recover or get up from any fall or stumble is through knowledge of God, not historical things or anything like that, but knowledge of God, meaning you must know the right way to go. You can't be ignorant of what God wants and desires or commands if you're going to recover from misstep. The problem is that a lot of people are ignorant. And this is why the Lord says his people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge. Because they're in sin, but don't know it. Don't realize it's not brought to their mind yet, or they don't believe they are. So they continue in it. And then eventually they're destroyed because of it. If a person says that we fall down, but we get up, it means what they're saying through their words. I know it sounds nice and everybody's like, hallelujah, we fall down, but we get up. What they're saying is, we fall down, but we get up, which literally means we know the right way to go, but we did the wrong action. But we're not going to stay down and continue the wrong action. We're going to get up and go the right way. That's what the words literally mean, if you want to turn that into a sermon. But if the people who are singing this song, saying we fall down, which means we're not doing the right thing, but the right thing to do, which actually be hypocritical, because if you don't know the right thing to do, how could you say you did the wrong thing? In order to say you fell down or did the wrong thing, it requires you know the right way. That's the only way you can say that. You got to have something to compare that to. So, meaning this, if a person loves violence and there is strife and rivalry and contention and beating people up for a living, if they're in that, but they don't think it's evil. They'll never think they're in sin. They can never say they fell. And since they don't think they're in sin, they'll never get up because they don't know the right way to go. Their way is perfect in their sight. But a person who knows that that's evil and is hating their neighbor, but they did it, then they be like, I did wrong. Which means they know the right way to go, which is, I should not use the members of my body to tear down any man out of human anger or for my own selfish ambitions or gains, for money or whatever. And so he goes the right way, which is loving your neighbors yourself. But if you have people who are lovers of violence, lovers of arrogant speech and boastfulness and degrading people, they're fans of Thor and Thanos and all that, and they're in sin and they're in these fallings, but then they make excuses for it. It's just a movie. I don't see nothing wrong with it. Oh, you can do that and then not be hostile. And they're like, they'll never get up. They continue in darkness. And if a saint is a person who fell but got up, but you're down and never get up, how can you say you're a saint? You can't. And that's what the apostle said in 1 John 3 when he said, here we know the children of God versus children of the devil. He that's been born into God's family cannot continue in practicing sin, for God's life is in him. But those who belong to the devil continue to practice sin, for the devil's been sinning since the beginning. Hereby, which by this we know the children of God versus the children of the devil. So they may sing the song and it sound nice, but they love contention and strife and rivalry and boastfulness and destroying one another and hating one another and you know, whatever the evil is, and they don't realize they're false. There's this down. You can't call them a saint because they're walking in darkness. They're just laying down on the ground. They fell and they didn't get up. But a saint requires the person get up and do what? Not fall, not continue lawlessness, but to go the right way to go, which is loving your neighbor and not in strife and rivalry and contention, not provoking people to wrath, not antagonizing people, not destroying people through your knowledge, not being boastful, arrogant in your accolades, or any of this type of stuff like that. Not being fans of idols, and not making excuses for evil. That's what a saint is. But a lot of these people proving themselves not to be saints, despite their words, because they continue lawlessness and they make excuses for it, so they stay down. They never get up. So for everybody, whether you a Jew in the flesh or not a Jew in the flesh, it doesn't matter at the end of the day. Do you fear God or not? And if you're in lawlessness, but you don't feel like you are, but you actually are because of God's commandment and Christ's character, you can't call yourself a saint. You must get up, put away that rivalry, throw away that John Cena, put away The Rock, put away Stone Cold, throw that whole WWE universe in the trash, NWA, MMA, UFC, throw away them stadiums. Ain't nothing godly that you need to get from Wakanda. All right. It's all ancestral worship and the idols of the Egyptians who your God destroyed on Passover night and will continue to destroy. There's nothing there for you. The place ain't for you. You want to be a boxer, you want to beat men up for a living because you just love the sport. You can't call yourself a saint if you walk in darkness and you fell and you just down and just lying down. You must get up, put away the gloves. No ifs, ands, or buts. You can't serve Christ and do that. You can't love God and hate his work and destroying it. God doesn't require you to be a theologian. He doesn't require that you get something peer-reviewed. Peer-reviewed is subject to change at any time once they publicize it. Meaning this, the discovery could have been made 3 years ago of what the actual truth is, but it ain't going through the peer-reviewed study yet. Doesn't mean it wasn't truth this whole time. It was truth the whole time. But if it takes 3 years for it to get put into a book and considered peer-reviewed, or whatever the case is, that's 3 years that went by that the truth ain't been publicized in the book. So in the meantime, while people are arguing their points based on the information they got right now, what they don't know is the truth is floating around there, and eventually 3 years from then, they're going to get the update finally. So when it comes through human intellect and through human knowledge, you don't come to know God, and human intellect don't determine what is all true. Peer review doesn't determine what's true or not, no different than the Grammy committee doesn't determine what's righteous or not. They just vote on what they like. And people get awards for evil things. And they want to give God thanks when they win the trophy. All right? And just because it went through the Recording Academy and the voting system doesn't mean it was the best music that was made that year. Just because this person won Artist of the Year doesn't mean they were the actual best Artist of the Year. It don't mean they had the best song of the year. Just because they won the award for best song of the year. They won the best song of the year among those submitted. Those submitted and voted upon. They were the best out of that. Doesn't mean they had the actual best song. All right? So when it comes to these system things, it doesn't determine what's real and reality and true and all that. It could be useful. Just like I could say, well, who won the Artist of the Year last year? Somebody can look it up and find the information, and it'd be useful to answer that question. But just because it's useful to answer that question, it doesn't mean they actually had the best, or they were the best artist, or they had the best song. It's that they were voted upon, and that information is useful if I ask the question who won the best artist of the year last year, but it doesn't mean they were the actual best artist. So the same thing with peer reviewed. It could be useful, and you could say, well, this is what the study says, but it doesn't determine what is actual factual and true. All right? Meaning the truth could be flown out there unpeer-reviewed online somewhere while your peer-reviewed studies need an update, okay? Because they got to go through this whole year process, months process before it can finally get publicized. Whereas the person who found out the truth could just put it online right now. So that's the point. So wisdom is needed. Not get high-minded off your researches and all this mini books and all this stuff. Just as Solomon said, the making of mini books, there's no end. There's always going to be something new somebody finds. Something they think they find, something they insinuate, goes through the thing. Somebody be like, well, that's useful. That's a great idea. And they put in the thing. That'll never end. All right? But the whole conclusion of the matter is to fear God and keep his commandments. You hear the gospel of Christ, know what the gospel calls you to do, and the kind of life you to live once you believe. And you spend the rest of your life focused on that, not all this other stuff. So leave that knowledge of fleshly origins alone because it don't matter. It ain't going to save your soul. It don't bring you any closer to God. And for some of you who are Christians beforehand, I'm going to leave it with this. You're Christians beforehand, before you ever woken up. And I want to explain to you how you must see this. When you say you were a Christian, what you're saying is that I had eternal life in me because I believed on the Messiah. And since I believed on the Messiah, I also believe that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob was my forefathers, according to the promise, like Isaac was. You also profess that you are now citizens of the kingdom of God, the heavenly Jerusalem that should ascend upon the earth in the last day. You also believe that you're the children of God and receive the Spirit of God, which is the Spirit of truth, that is to be a seal until the day of redemption, and that you're going to receive a new body and put off this old body, and you've been delivered from sin, and you've overcome the world and the evil one. Those are the things that you're saying you was already. Then somebody came and told you, whether it be on the streets, online, whatever, you're in slavery, even though you believe on Christ, and no, you're not enslaved. And even if you were enslaved, you're not really enslaved. And they'll tell you, you don't know who you are. Even though you're in Christ and know exactly who you are. You ain't got no land. Even though you say you believe on Christ, and you know you have a land. You're actually citizens right now. You actually live there right now. You got to come back to these laws, statutes, commandments. But if I believe on Christ, I already know how I can live. It's impossible to come to Christ and now I know how you to live. I'm not lacking how I should live. Under follow the example of Christ. And you said that that's what you was, and that's what you believed. But then these men came and convinced you you're missing all those things you really got. And come back to this broken system. The one where you can't do everything and we can do this, we can't do that because we ain't got no land and all that. You come into that. You go from having a seal that reminds you of all things Christ taught to now feel the need you need to wear fringes to remind you how to keep the commandments of God. You go from the freedom in Christ to now into the bondage where you need all these physical things to help you out. And so on and so forth. We can go into more depths about it maybe Sunday. But somebody came along and convinced you you're missing everything that you got. And you were deceived and you went under it. Now, because you came to the knowledge, you're an Israelite, now you feel like you know who you are now. You know who your people is now. And you know who your God is now. And you know what land is yours now. And now there's some promises for you. Even though you was in Christ, supposedly, had the better promises than any other promises that was ever made to the children of Israel under the First Testament. You're part of a land that you could never be cast out of, but you rather take pride in a land you've been cast out of. And then under a broken system that you could barely ever keep, instead of glorifying in the fact that in Christ you can actually fulfill the law of God by your actions, apart from the law of Moses. And then somebody convinced you don't know who your forefathers is, even though in Christ you already knew who they were. The same people these guys in the streets are trying to point you to. You're Abraham, Isaac, Jacob's kids. Yeah, I know that. How do you know that when you don't know who you are? I do know who I am. And I know they're my foreparents. And I'm fully convinced about this because I believe on Christ. But they're like, you don't know who your forefathers is. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is your foreparents. You're right. I didn't know they were my forefathers, even though I claimed I did. But yeah, I didn't know. Now I know because I'm an Israelite. Like, stop it. How many Jews, how many physical Israelites, though physically Israelites in the flesh, how many of them, majority of them, can't say that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is their foreparents because they're actually not his kids. So this rabbit trail, this lost world of you must know who you are, they're following that same logic that a lot of black people fall in. If you don't know where you came from, you don't know where you're going, and all that kind of bull crap. That's human wisdom, that's human intellect, that's human whatever. It's carnal. But it convinces you you're missing what you supposedly had. And so now you feel pride in discovering something you already knew. And you show more pride and happiness about this thing as if you discovered it for the first time. What a slap in the face for Christ, of Christ. To had all those things and realize all those realities and truths and say you believed that. To then slap him in the face and be confident and find this pride and confidence and this joy in rediscovering something you already knew. And it wasn't even a greater thing. It's the lesser thing. Like you're happy about the lesser discovery than the greater discovery. You've been knew it was wrong to lie. Before you ever knew you was Israelite. Now all of a sudden, not lying or something on top of your Richter scale now because you've woken up to who you are. You've been knew you shouldn't have been an adulterer. Now all of a sudden, you got to keep the laws of God because you're Israelite. Now you feel like you got to keep the laws of God because you find out you're some special race group. You've been knew it was wrong to steal. Now all of a sudden, because you woke up, you're an Israelite, I got to love my people. You've been knew these things. Your conscience has been accusing you. And you refuse to obey God. Now you slide into you being an Israelite. Now you feel some loyalty to have to do this because you're not viewing the law of God as you should. You're viewing it as some cultural thing. This is my culture. So you only do it to be seen. Only to appear as a Jew. If your service to God and your seriousness of it came about after you feel like you was a Jew, you ain't falling for the right reasons. But the question was the Israelites supposed to be an example and teachers of the law to other nations? That is what they were supposed to do. That's why they have had a lot of proselytes. And even during the time of Christ, the scribes and Pharisees and them were going around still doing that. That's what they were to do. They were a priestly nation. And we notice in the law, priests don't serve themselves. So if the high priest, Aaron, served not himself alone, meaning sacrifice for his own sins, but for the sins of the other people to make them clean, then we know that the priests don't serve themselves. It's not a selfish position. So if Israel was a priestly nation, then they didn't serve themselves. So the purpose of being called out was not to serve themselves, but to serve others, bringing others to the knowledge of God who made them. And so that was, but they became worse than the heathens because they had the greater revelation of who God was, and they still departed from him. And but through their disobedience, the Lord opened up salvation for the Gentiles, which was his plan from the beginning, through the revelation of Christ. And now, as we went over a couple of classes ago, what the Lord is doing now, after he finished grafting in all the Gentiles, he's going to graft in. Then there's a remnant among the natural seed that he's going to bring in. And then the scripture, all Israel shall be saved, will be fulfilled. So this is all part of God's plan. That's what they were supposed to do. That responsibility still lies with upon not the national, well, I'm trying to explain it, not the national race of Jews, neither in Judaism as it was under the First Testament. Because when they had that duty, when they were proselytizing people and make them converts, it was to bring them under the covenant of that time, which was the law of Moses. But not so much now. Not no more now. When the Jews that believe go about and evangelize, and when the Gentiles that believe have been grafted in and made one with them go out and evangelize, we evangelize about Christ, and the covenant we bring people under is under Christ and not the Mosaic covenant. And so that responsibility of being a light to the nations falls upon the church, which is believing Jews and believing Gentiles, and not the national nation of Israel. They're the ones being evangelized to. They're the ones being evangelized to by the church, meaning the believing Jews and believing Gentiles. We're evangelizing to the seed of Abraham that don't believe. And so, because we're the priests, we're the kingdom of priests called out by God. We're part of Christ's body. The unbelieving Jews are not, and the unbelieving Gentiles are not. So they're the ones being evangelized too. So that responsibility fell upon the church, which is made of believing Jews and believing Gentiles. It is not the responsibility of the 12 tribes or anything like that, as it once was under the First Testament. That testament was voided, and the people of God that were always established by way of blood is established in Christ's blood. And so that's who the responsibility falls upon, whoever is the people of God by blood. But other than that, brothers and sisters, I'm going to go ahead and rest my body up a little bit. Lord, so I see y'all Sunday at 9 a.m. Central Time, 10 a.m. 10 a.m. Eastern Time here for the gathering as we continue on. But I wanted to talk to you guys about what I saw the other night. It was some other stuff I want to bring up, but I don't got the energy now to go through it. But we know the commandment of Christ, and that behavior from the Christians the other night on Berean's channel was terrible, man. And the fact y'all kept egging him on was evil. He was in his flesh. Slick ended up getting in his flesh, but he was being provoked. He was being provoked. And Damon Richardson was antagonizing him and boasting in his knowledge and all of the stuff. Remember what the whole peer review thing is. It could be useful information, but it doesn't determine what's true, and it's subject to change. And then, and of course, the deceptions that we went over a little bit that came from the Black Israelite side, and why it's like that, and to be, to be careful. But the only way that you'll be safe from being deceived is that one sure way that we talked about months ago. We talk about it all the time. I constantly remind you guys about it. The Lord only gave one sure way that you'll never be deceived. And it's not by coming to the knowledge of Israelites, not by peer review studies, it's not by through much research. It's by believing the gospel concerning Christ. And the apostle said, if you grow in these attributes, brotherly love, endurance, patience, self-control, if you grow in those things, he said, you'll never wither away. You'll never be barren or unfruitful in your knowledge of our Lord, and you'll never fall away. That's the one sure way. And so, other than that, your brothers and sisters, be safe, Lord's will. Thank you for the prayers. Thank you, Lord, for the answer prayer. Give me strength to get through the class. But now I must lay it down now. But I love you guys. Lord's will. Talk to y'all a little bit later on. Peace.